Present? Ken, present. Thank you. Any additions or deletions from the work session agenda?
Yes. Mr. McGinley, I would like to request that we move a discussion with Joyce Insurance Agency onto the work session so that we can have some discussion about it without tying up the voting session.
Second that, Mr. Chair.
That's fine with me. Make that number 3. Anyone else? We have a motion to approve it with the amendment.
So moved.
Ms. Howe? Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Morelli, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. In light of our agenda for this evening, I would ask that people move along quickly and succinctly wherever possible, especially with the committee reports. Okay? So we're moving down to the committee reports for council. Act 13, Ms. Wakes.
Nothing to report. We're proud of our work that we've done this year.
Thank you. ABCs, Ms. Wakes.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Budget and Finance, we had our meeting last week with our auditor and went over information in regards to the past audit and in preparation for the 2019 audit. Just as a note, this will be the last year that that company will be doing our audit. As required by the charter, we would have to go with a new company the following year, so that will be one of the charges of the audit committee during 2020. Legislative?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Real Estate, Ms. Wakes.
Nothing to report. We are waiting on those wonderful appraisals so we can get those properties sold and back on the tax rolls.
Thank you. Strategic Initiatives, Ms. Howe.
Nothing to report. County Code Review, I do have a draft, but given all of the important things that we've been dealing with now, I felt that we should wait to discuss the draft until we have more time.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Moving down to the council-related committees, Blighted Properties, Mr. Haas.
Chairman, Blighted Property Committee will meet in January, and we're just waiting on the ABCs to confirm the appointments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Riverfront Parks, there's no report. Plains TIF, there's no report. That brings us down to the Joyce Insurance. The gentleman is here from Joyce Insurance. You want to make your presentation, and we'll probably have some questions. Please, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Lee Moran. I've been, is this on?
Yes, it is.
My name's Lee Moran. I've been with the Joyce Insurance Group since 1989. I've been in the insurance business since 1980. I have a CPCU designation. So I've been around the block. I'm a lifelong Luzerne County resident as well. Recently, we presented a full-blown proposal. Joe Joyce and some of our other team members presented a full proposal to you folks. So I guess I was told today that we wanted to come in.
Not to us.
Pardon?
Not to us. That
No, it wasn't to
proposal.
you. It was other representatives
Yeah,
of the
this
county,
committee,
though.
I believe.
So I was told we were to come here and just introduce the team. We work as a team. We have people that do different functions, serve different functions. We have an advantage, I think, of being a local broker where we're here in Luzerne County. We pay Luzerne County taxes. We have about 40 Luzerne County employees and some 20 others that are in that office in Allentown and one other place. So most of us are Luzerne County people. We do quite a bit of municipal business. We insure a big chunk of Lackawanna County. We also do many boroughs, towns, sewer authorities, school districts, etc. So we've had quite a bit of experience in the municipal arena. We put together a team to try and handle the insurance county's needs as a broker. Joe Joyce Jr. is the team leader. Unfortunately, he had some kind of family emergency. He wasn't able to be here tonight, and that's kind of why I'm here. He'll oversee the whole county program and coordinate it, oversee it. I was told he's going to, in the first 60 days, facilitate an audit of the program, look over what you have now, see if we think there's anything missing, anything can be improved upon. So that's the first step. We also, on our team, we have 2 guys that are experienced loss control safety people. And each one of them will get up and for a minute or two give a brief thing about what they intend to do. George Knackley is the first guy. He's got 41 years experience, one more year than myself in the business. His area is risk management and loss control. He has a strong background in workers' comp, excess workers' comp as well. He'll also coordinate on-site inspections of different buildings and properties of the county. He'll analyze loss runs, loss data, look for claim trends, frequency, severity issues or problems that need to be addressed. So that's his forte. Then we have another gentleman, Tom Conigliaro, he's got 30 years experience in insurance. He's also a risk management safety guy, but his thing more is on safety outside of the workers' comp area pretty much. He'll look to provide fleet safety, driver training, things of that nature, safety committee training. I think you have a safety committee. He's able to help get certification every year where you have to get certified and approved by the state. He can help along those lines. So George and Tom will work together along with the insurance company loss control people. They all have their own people, and those people specialize in municipal insurance. So we'll work hand in glove with those folks from the different various insurance companies. The insurance companies, I mean, they're out to help you and do whatever they can for you, but obviously their first allegiance is to their company that they work for and to make sure that it's profitable and that they make money. So we'll kind of be an overseer to make sure that they're doing what's best for you. Our first allegiance is to you and to do what we think is right for the county. So that's George and Tom's role. Patrick Andrews is our IT guy. He's a computer wizard. He really is an expert in cyber. He's also recently gotten licensed in insurance, so he can address issues and look and examine policies and things like that. He's helping our salespeople sell some cyber insurance because it's a relatively new field to a lot of our existing customers. So he'll be here to help coordinate your cyber program, see if you have any problems or in your systems, places where you can be hacked or broken into, and try to reduce risk, work with the different cyber insurance carriers to make sure we get you the best pricing, the best program, because that's a real specialty area, and it's good to have a guy that's his forte. And then lastly is Larry Reagan, who is going to be the day-to-day nuts and bolts kind of stuff, certificates of insurance, endorsements, binders. If you add a vehicle or two and you call, if you need ID cards, anything of that day-to-day nature, Larry will be your point person for that stuff. So with that said, I'll first introduce you to George Knackley. He's here somewhere. Here's George, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate the kind words. First, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing us the opportunity to come here this evening, give you some idea of what we do and what we intend to do to try and help and move things along for the county. I'm not going to belabor a lot of points with you and go for quite a long time, just to give you some idea of the background experience that we're going to try and bring to the table for you. My own personal experiences, I've worked, I'm originally, just so you know, I'm originally a resident of Wilkes-Barre, was born and raised here, graduated from GAR High School, and I think I've got quite a number of years on me, particularly in claims, because you don't necessarily lose all your hair at the age that I did without those kind of experiences. But at any rate, I worked for 3 national insurance carriers, predominantly in workers' compensation, handling everything from underwriting oversight to policy operations into marketing. And a major part of it was developing programs and understanding claims, what their effects are, frequency, severity, things of that nature, and developing programs to lower the risk exposure for clients that are out there. I had 10 years of claims experience before moving into underwriting and into marketing. I'm also the past president of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Claims Association. And my experience basically on the comp side that I'm going to try to bring to the table for you is everything from modification calculations, trying to project where you're going to be down the road, what those costs are, your frequency and severity exposures that you might have, and what can we do as far as workplace safety to enhance it and lower the risk exposures for the county. Those include total reviews of loss runs, evaluating them, seeing where there might be repetition, problem areas, and really coordinating more with whomever you have on your side of it to make sure things work better. I'm not here to reinvent the wheel for you. My main objective really is to enhance the programs that you have, come up with suggestions to make it better. One advantage that I hope to bring to the table really is those years of experience on the company side. I understand what they're thinking and where they're trying to go with their programs. So if they try to lay something out that I don't think would be in the best interest of the county, I'm going to challenge it. Okay? And I'm going to keep you aware of everything along the way as to what we're doing and why we're doing it, and actually get your input before we go back. Those are the main things that I'm going to try to do in getting a total evaluation of your program and to help make it work right. So having said that, what I'd like to do is have Tom Conigliaro come up. Just as a side, Lee had mentioned that safety committees, Tom is a certified training person, certified with the Department of Labor to do the training for your safety committee. I am as well. So you have two people that can do the training and all the available things that we have. We also have access to a number of different sources that if you had a particular issue or concern, they're already pre-reviewed. They've passed the legal tests that are out there, and we subscribe to this program that provides the information. So if you need specific information, we can provide that as well. So having said that, and without taking too much of your time, I'd like to have Tom come up and spend a few minutes with you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Tom Conigliaro. I'm Director of Risk Management and Loss Control at Joyce Insurance Group. Much of our work in loss control is in the realm of claims review, which is basically looking at historical information, and that is very important work. But our primary focus is to institute and promote a culture of safety, and that does take time. We begin, as George had noted, by reviewing your loss history, and we're looking for departmental and job-specific trends over the past 3 to 5 years. We meet with managers and supervisors to discuss and understand each department's mission, problems, and concerns. We review your current safety plan, policies, and procedures, and we conduct departmental inspections and provide a report of findings and recommendations. The front lines of accident prevention is where we really want to concentrate most of our efforts, and this must begin through management-endorsed and supported policies and procedures, which we will review and make comment and make changes where we think may be necessary. Also, through the training of personnel within the Luzerne County, supervisor accountability is something we strongly believe in, and that is working with managers and supervisors to create reasonable guidelines and requirements of what is acceptable and not acceptable behavior on the job. This is done through training, instructions, and accountability. Finally, we do accident investigation. We do it of incidents and near misses, as well as actual losses through accident. We do extensive work. We will work very hard for you. And finally, I just thank you very much for this opportunity to make this presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Andrews, and I'm Joyce Insurance Cyber Liability Specialist. A brief background of myself is I've been in the information technology field for 10 years now and have worked in multiple environments, each unique in their security challenges. I started at Joyce in 2015 and in 2018 became licensed. The current landscape of both technology and cyber liability insurance is both complicated and always changing. We provide both an insurance perspective as well as an IT security background through myself to evaluate your systems, identify risks specific to these systems. Just as an example, January 14th, 2020, Windows 7 is end of life. And what that means is that Microsoft no longer provides security patches for that operating system. We take that information and we make sure that your cyber policy is tailored specifically to cover those risks. With how complex and abstract security threats can be, I believe it's absolutely necessary to have someone who's capable of offering risk evaluation and advisement through an IT security perspective as well as an insurance perspective. This allows us to confidently write your cyber liability policy based on your environment's risks. Local governments specifically are large targets. They have large targets on their backs concerning cyber attacks. If you spend 5 minutes looking online, you could find day-to-day news articles regarding breaches. It's really not a matter of if, but when regarding current IT security. It's a zero-sum game. Some companies invest millions in their cybersecurity infrastructure, and all it takes is one click of a bad email attachment, and they're compromised. So cyber policies are important because their coverages specifically protect against these risks. And because of today's technology landscape, having little to no cyber coverage is no longer an option. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Moran, anyone else? That's it? Mr. Moran, you want to go back to the podium? Yes, please. Questions for Ms. Moran? Ms. Houck?
Yes,
Thank you for coming.
sure,
tonight.
sure.
Um,
Pleasure.
We do have a history in this county with Joyce Insurance,
Right,
and I'm sure you expected this to come up.
yes.
So your company was actually the broker of record, was it not, in 2011 when we did not have proper insurance coverage?
Well, we were the broker in 2011, that's true, but you did have proper insurance coverage. The issue was a mistake we made on a certificate. The specifications in the RFP called for the fact that we should have $5 million of errors and omissions coverage. At the time, we only had $3 million. But the girl mistakenly she saw the RFP and stuff, she put $5 million on the certificate. So it was a kind of a mistake and a misstatement on our part, on our insurance, but it did not affect your coverage in any way. You had proper insurance. And
Well, actually, I think there's a little more to it than that. And, you know, I've seen the findings from the insurance commissioner where, you know, it was an acknowledgement that there was a false statement on the certificate. But beyond that false statement that was actually issued to the county, I believe that there was a discrepancy in the insurance coverage for the renovation, that there should have been builder's risk coverage that your company did not make sure they had, and it ended up costing the county $216,000 plus
that part
attorney fees.
I was not involved in or even aware of, to tell you the truth.
But that's what you
Okay.
just talked about making sure that
Okay.
you're protecting the county's assets.
Right.
And that there should have been some kind of view, some oversight of what that company had available in terms of their own risk coverage. And because your company did not make sure that that happened, the county ended up paying $216,000 and more, and attorney's fees as well because of that.
Okay, sorry, I was not aware about that.
Were you working for Joyce in 2011?
I was, but I wasn't involved in the county's program at the time.
Okay.
So,
Other questions?
anything else?
Yes, Ms. Saban?
Yes,
You said you work with a lot of other municipalities.
correct.
You work with Scranton.
Well, Lackawanna County,
Okay,
yes.
so do you handle the jail in Lackawanna County? Do you have experience with the prison?
I don't believe we do, no. So,
Other people? Questions?
else?
For any of the gentlemen who came up to the microphone?
I have a question just for the manager,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I will. I mean, Mr. Manager, obviously Joyce was your second choice. Can you explain to the body why the former one was your first selection?
Yeah,
Brown & Brown then.
Sure. Obviously, we've worked with Brown & Brown for years. Brown & Brown has done a great job for Luzerne County. I'm not saying Joyce won't do a great job for Luzerne County, but I know Brown & Brown did do a great job for Luzerne County during their time with us as our broker. They were the insurer of record from the time I was solicitor in 2013 up until obviously this year. The committee that I put in place recommended them highly, and we brought that forward to council. It's council's decision as to who the broker will be based upon the contract, and obviously the next looking at the proposals, a Luzerne County business. It was much lower in price, $10,000 lower, who is a very similar proposal to Brown & Brown, would be Joyce & Joyce. Be Joyce.
Okay. Because again, I'm looking at that, Brown & Brown did a fantastic job. They shrinked on our deductible. They saved the county taxpayers $100,000+ in their contract. And also they were properly vetted by this committee, and they were selected by the manager. That's why when we're sitting here tonight, to me, it just, it seems a little arbitrary to me. Thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Pedri, so going back to that point, if I may, so, and I think I'll mention it later, a bigger picture here, but my question is when it comes to services, forgetting about fees, RFPs, forget about the committee, when the broker of record, non-insurance, what differences?
Well, I think that Brown & Brown provided a level of knowledge. Obviously, they've been working with us for 6 years, and that's the reason why why I originally recommended them to the council. I have talked to Joyce. They will be present for all of our meetings that we asked for our safety commission meeting, for our workers' comp meeting, for all of those things. I fully expect them to provide the same level of service, if not, I haven't worked with them yet with regard to this situation.
So
but
I
I
get
fully
what you're
expect
saying
them
is,
to.
so what you're saying is, it's obviously experience with a broker we've worked with, but in the sense of, I'm asking the sense of just hard copy, black and white, on the RFP, what are we missing? Is there anything that's different in the proposal, that's a difference in the 10,000 we're getting or not getting versus different brokers?
No, I think of in the black and white, I want to see a difference as opposed to the long-term work with us from the past.
Okay, all right.
Other people?
I have one more question.
Yes.
So Brown & Brown, their services were very good, excellent, and there's basically the same comparison with Joyce. I mean, they're comparable. Will Joyce be able to work with our actuary and Morgan Stanley, Rich Azuri,
Sure,
like Brown & Brown has?
absolutely.
Yeah, this is what I confirmed with Joyce earlier this week. Is that all the things that we've come to expect of our insurance broker? Joyce is willing to present those things and be ready for all those.
I have one, Mr. McKinley, and I guess it would be directed. I actually have two. One for Mr. Moran. Kind of piggybacking off what Ms. Hout asked about the past history.
Mm-hmm.
Has anything been done, or what could you tell the county council or this group of? Has anything been put in place to ensure that something like that couldn't happen again?
Yeah.
Or how would you know? Like you said, it was that the RFP said this, or like how would you? What could you?
Well,
do
the thing with the certificate, we've taken steps. Our management system that we use, AMS, is our insurance company management system, and it has a better way of tracking limits on certificates of insurance, and it's very difficult to make that kind of mistake because the system will override you and challenge you if you do something like that. Another thing is we are a much stronger staffed agency now than we were 10 years ago or 12, 15 years ago. We didn't have Tom and George back then, risk safety people. You know, we were a growing local agency, but now I think we're on a par with a lot of the, I don't know if I'd say national, but at least large regional and, quadrant of the state. And I think the fact that we are here locally, we're right, 20 minutes up the road, we could, if you have a fire or a serious issue, we can be here in, 10 minutes, as opposed to, somebody that's from out of the area altogether. So, we all pay Luzerne County taxes. We We all do a lot with Luzerne County Charity. We have this Miles for Michael where we raise money for cancer, and we do a lot of the good things that, charity and things, in this county. So I think there's a lot to be said for dealing with local people when you can, when it's apples for apples. If the local guy's not as good as an outside guy, then sure, I understand that. But I think we're every bit as good as what you had before, and we are local. So that's my...
Okay, and I guess my other question would be, I don't think it's for you. Actually,
Okay.
I think it would probably be for Mr. Andrews.
Okay?
Because when he talked about the cyber stuff,
Yep.
with everything that goes on and how risky that is, and Patrick, I think, raised a great point and said it's constantly changing.
Correct.
Like what could be done to ensure that that the county systems are where they should be, or like, are you? I guess what could be done? Does Patrick or the firm, does somebody look at it differently and say, we should look at this, or this should be changed, or this is a risk, or this is like, how do you handle
Yeah,
something
well,
that's changing?
Let me let Patrick answer that
Yeah,
question.
Patrick, will you come up to the microphone, please?
Right. Maybe you should answer that. Go ahead, Patrick. I'm sorry.
Sure. So one of the services I provide specifically as cyber liability specialist for Joyce is I work hand in hand with the cyber insurance companies that write the policies. One of our strengths is that with my technology background, I'm able to have a conversation with the staff or the IT team to help identify risk with your systems, and then compare that against the cyber insurance policy, and just make sure that the areas where, whether it's through budgetary concerns or any other kind of reason where you can't necessarily shore up your security posture, at least you're covered through a cyber policy. These types of things, like I mentioned previously, if you spend any time Googling anything with computers and the news, you find that various areas run into these compromises. So I think that's one of the things that sets Joyce aside, is just I have 10 years experience in the field. I'm familiar with the systems as well as the insurance, and it's really an area of risk that you can't ignore or be negligent of.
Have another question? No?
No, we had a cyber problem this year. Was there any, I don't know if you know how it was handled, or it took fairly long time, I think, for it to be cleaned up totally for all.
Some of it's not cleaned up yet.
And some of it's not cleaned up yet. So are you right there working with the people to try to get it cleaned up? Or?
Well, we provide a place of advisement for those things. I can't flip the switches for you, but through my experience in the IT field, I'm able to work with the carrier that you're written with for your policy to, assist the IT team, and at the very least conveying what's going on and working that towards where your coverages are and things like that. So, in the event of one of these breaches, obviously you're familiar, systems are down. Time is critical. Every minute means a lot in a variety of ways. And really any extra help you can get at that point is important. So I work alongside the IT teams as well as the carriers.
Ms. Hauk?
Yeah, this is really not a question for you, Mr. Andrews, so you could probably sit down if you'd like to.
Just to add to what he said, I'm not a cyber guy by any means, but I have worked on
Please,
cyber
if you're going to speak, would you go to the microphone so everybody can hear? And please, thank you.
I'm not a cyber guy, but I've worked on some of the larger accounts we insure, not necessarily municipal accounts, but every big account has cyber exposures and concerns. And a lot of the companies now, the bigger companies especially, Chubbs and Travelers and ACE and AIG, that have programs for cyber, they'll, Patrick said what we can do as an agency, but they have teams of cyber specialists too that they'll ask you to put together a team of people that work for the county that deal with cyber, and maybe you have that already. But they'll send people, I think, to actually look at your systems and say, we think you could do better on this, or, this program you're using for budgeting, and, we see that it's vulnerable here or there, so they'll address those kind of issues as well, and Patrick will work hand in glove with that, okay?
Mr. Pedri, did that happen, is that the same type of issue, and help that we had in the past situation?
Correct. Yeah, when we had our cyber attack insurance in place for the last time, and it was obviously a great thing that we did. It was a $10,000 deductible for that policy. We were able to work with that company, and obviously we're still working with that company in order to get fully recouped for the large number that we've been out to work on this.
Ms. Houck?
Yep.
Okay,
First of all, I want to say that I'm really glad to hear you talk about how you want to keep the money local. And I might remind you about that later on in the evening when we talk about $135,000 that goes to New Jersey. But as much as I understand the desire of the agency to lay the problem with the certificate, the false certificate, at the feet of the girl, as Mr. Moran said, here is the finding from the insurance commissioner, and what it says is that she stated during an interview that she was aware of the issuing of the certificates of insurance under the policy at $5 million, and she advised the respondent, who was the owner of the agency, that the certificates did not reflect the correct amount of errors and omissions coverage, and the respondent confirmed that he bore the responsibility for the certificates. In other words, he told her, just put it on the certificate. And the finding, the conclusion of law in this is that the respondent, the Joyce agency, intentionally misrepresented the terms of an actual or proposed insurance contract or application for insurance. It's a violation of the law.
It says
So,
intentional.
it's here. This is the finding from the insurance commissioner. Dated May 15th,
One
2012.
second, let Ms. Houck finish, please.
Dated May 15th, 2012.
Ms. Moran?
as I said before, we were partially at fault, and I admit that. But another aspect of this whole thing was the fact that we have different agencies. We have 3 agencies as part of the Joyce Insurance Group. There's Joyce Associates, who are the people that are looking to write this insurance and wrote it in the past. There's Joyce Jackman and Bell, and there's Joyce Haggerty Bell. They're all separate agencies, but with some commonality of ownership. And when we have a contract with a Travelers, for example, and I think Travelers was the company back then at the time, the contract is in the one agency's name, but it includes the other entities as well. And I think the person that told that girl to do what she did looked at it and said, if we get sued for something we did wrong, not just Joyce Insurance Associates is going to get sued. Joyce Jackman and Bell is going to get sued. Joyce Haggerty Bell is going to get sued because they're going to see the policy that all of these entities are under this contract. So they looked at it and said, if you add the limits together of the 3 entities, it was well more than the $5 million. And I think that's why he told her to do what she did. So
It wasn't, it totaled $3 million. That was what it totaled.
No, that's not correct.
Yeah. If
'Cause
you would
I know
like
for
to
a
see
fact-
this, I'll send it around to you. Okay.
One entity had 3, another entity had 3, and the third one I think might have had 1 or 2. So,
Thank you. Other questions?
I just, I've got a question in general. So you sent out an RFP or RFQ, and then they came back, and they were the low bidder, but you choose to ignore the low bidder and to send a second bidder because you like the services.
Correct.
Is that appropriate? I mean,
Yes.
you can just withhold that information from council?
I did not vote for council. I told council that information.
Well, I don't think you told us until after the vote.
No.
We
It
knew
was before.
beforehand that they were 10,000 less?
Correct.
We did.
Yeah, I provided that to council via email.
Okay.
And it was asked at the work session, who was the low bidder and where is those individuals from? I provided that information to council prior to your vote.
Okay, so all the time, you always provide us with all the bids and what the prices are.
No,
Okay.
but
Maybe
I
you
could.
should. Maybe you should, I think. I think in the future you should for new council, because I think those ENS voting machines that were bought initially for the polling places were in excess of what the other bid was by about $70,000. So I just want to make sure that maybe it needs to be on a piece of paper when we're voting, that here's your 3, and you won't get in this predicament again. And I think that will prevent you from getting in it, especially if they're all equal. You're saying now that they're all equal, but yet you still chose to recommend somebody you're doing, only because you're doing business with them and you know them, you chose to recommend them to us at $10,000 more, knowing that we got a $5 million hole in the budget that we've got to fill.
Other questions?
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So the current contract with Brown and Brown, how long does that last?
The end of the year.
It lasts until December 31st. Okay, thank you.
I got one more question for the Joyces. Did you review any of the insurance policies that Brown and Brown put in place?
No, we reviewed a summary that they gave to you.
Right.
It was given to us to look at. It wasn't the policy.
Right.
The brief
So
synopsis
you looked at
that they provide
and the
and
costs and all that stuff? The cost of the policies, the various policies?
Well, we came in with our cost.
Right. Right, and you came in with your cost, what you would charge as a broker of record. And then by putting the policies out there, have you looked at any of the policies that are out there to see if we could save any money on any of them?
No, that's what we intend to do with this audit.
Okay, you'll do that afterwards, yeah.
Not being your broker, we weren't allowed to do that because we had no business. That's
correct.
But if you name us as a broker, that's what we would do first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they would have to be broker of record in order to be able to review that information.
Aren't those policies public record, though, once they're approved? So anybody can look at them? They're not hidden anywhere, they're public record, they should be posted on the website. All right.
Yes, they could be. There's nothing proprietary about them. They're insurance policies.
Right, yeah.
With definitions of terms and policy limits.
Right, they're all public record, okay.
Well, Mr. Urban, to follow up on your comments, yes, I agree that I think we should have the information in regards bidding. That was one of the things that was pointed out to me when there was an investigation regarding some of the things that developed with the elections. And if I had known at that point in time, that situation, I don't know how I would have voted at that point, but it may have changed it. So yes, I do agree with that, and I think that's something that we should have access to. And particularly in light of the fact that we have a budget, as you alluded to, that we know we have to deal with and try to trim and bring it down into a reasonable number that people are able to survive with. So I think that's very important to remember. And this is something that we have to deal with, and it's something going forward that I think we should make sure we follow through and have that information. And that's my opinion at this point in time.
Can I ask, and since we're on this subject, I was going to mention it later on, but I'm glad you brought it up, and I think it's appropriate. So since the last meeting, I was thinking about this whole process and how it all falls in play. And I'm going to start with the committees. I'm a big fan of committees. There's a role for committees. But again, committees' jobs are to get information, get the facts, find out, do the work. But on top of that, committees don't represent the public. I don't know who are on these committees. I don't know if you do. I don't know if they had any ties. Not downplaying them. I'm giving them a lot of credit for what they've done. But committees' roles are in this situation to give a recommendation, giving information to the manager. Again, 3 vendors, pros and cons of each of the vendors. If they want to give their recommendation, fine. But it goes to the manager. The manager, as we know, we debated this, gives his recommendation to us. We don't pick one of the 3. It's the manager's pick to us. And I don't know if Mr. Pedri, I'm assuming if he said he gave us the numbers, he did. I didn't know that until, actually, Mr. Vogt mentioned that there was a lower bidder. To be quite honest, I was prepared to vote for Brown & Brown because of that, but it was brought to my attention, new information I did not know or understand. But with that said, let me add on to the fact of county council. There's a role we play here. And I found it kind of surprising, the fact that some people find it surprising when we shoot down the manager. And all due respect to Mr. Pedri, That's our job. That's where this comes into play. We can shoot down the manager. And it comes down to understanding facts. And so, again, what you said, Mr. McGinley, Mr. Urban, I agree, as you guys move forward here, providing more information so council's more aware of the fact. But again, council has a role here. We have a responsibility. We're not the Queen of England where we're just here for show and have no, we do have a say and we have teeth. And so that's all part of this process. And so, I'm just thinking about this from the start of committees. Committees need to know their role. The manager needs to understand the role, and I think the public needs to understand and respect council's role here, and the fact that we don't always have to take the manager's position. That's why we're here. I don't believe other council members will do it, and it's not no disrespect to Mr. Pedri. I think he understands where I'm coming from. But if we have more information, and so with that said, if I had more information at the time, I would be. And it's one of the reasons why I'm rethinking my vote here. So just wanted to paint the big picture because I was thinking about this over the week. So something to think about.
Yes, Mr. Perry.
Morelli, I certainly agree wholeheartedly with you, with your statement you made. You and I discussed this the last month. Yes, we should have that information. And just so we know Plan B, or if there's a change in anything, that we actually can look at it and say, no, I don't want this. Then this county manager come back with another company. That's fine.
Thank you. Mr. Haas?
Yeah, I'm assuming that when we get insurance services, that the contracts are dispersed throughout the year, that they come due at different times of the year, Mr. Manager, or is it, because on December 31st, I'm guessing not all the policies. Do any lapse at the beginning of the year?
Some end of January, at the end of January.
At the end of January, some end of January. So we're going to continue on through the current policies. There's not one that comes due?
We have to have policies in place, though.
Yes.
We can't afford a lapse in coverage.
Right, that's what I want to clarify, that whatever policies that are going to come due, that won't take place till the end of January.
Correct.
So you can probably see where I'm going with this. Why don't we, just like the voting machine issue, why don't we postpone this vote for the new council, because basically that decision will handicap the new council just like the voting machines that we have precedent for at this point. And if none of the contracts then will lapse, there's no harm in waiting a few more weeks for potentially a different broker to come in. And I would ask...
The policies have to be signed
Sure.
and reviewed.
Absolutely.
If the next council doesn't vote on a broker, then our policies could lapse.
Right, and I don't think the new council would do that, and I just think it would be more prudent, given that there's precedent for some other issues here. I think that would be very wise.
I also just want to point out that when we have this discussion of what we're posting on the website, particularly with the insurance policies, which are public, they have our policy limits, and they'll also have our deductibles, which usually are disclosed after litigation is commenced and exchanged during discovery. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be posted on the website. I'm saying that has to be a consideration.
Very good.
Anyone else? Ms. Sedgman?
Yes, I'm in kind of a quandary because, we had an ethical issue with the voting machines, which, was more money, I think, yes, but the second amount of money was an ethical issue. So then, for me personally, and I don't know if anybody else, it's an ethical issue here too, that probably this particular issue, I wasn't around for it, but probably had as much angst for the council as the issue regarding the voting machines. So that's the concern
Actually,
I have.
the issue that was addressed was with the commissioners. That was not something the council dealt
the
with.
commissioners.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to public comment. Did anybody pass up a slip? No? No slip? Okay. Mr. Rabel, you can start, and then Mr. Wojtowicz and Mr. Newman, and Mr. Griff. Okay? And Mr. Shiner.
Good evening, Council. I appreciate the presentation that was given by Joyce, and they said that they worked with different municipalities over the course of many years. Ms. Howe brought up 2011. They dealt with another entity, municipal government entity, in 2011, the Hazleton Area School District. And at that time, they were a bidder along with Dreyfus Insurance Group. And there's a consternation in terms of the bidding, similar to what this council has, because as Mr. Morelli pointed out, it was $10,000 difference between this one and Brown. Well, in 2011, the difference was $6,000 with Joyce and Dreyfus. Now, problem was that there was some problem with regards to certain amount of coverage in certain areas, and Dreyfus provided that information, Joyce didn't. And then the owner, I guess the owner of Dreyfus, brought this to the attention of the solicitor of the school district, and the school district talked it over with the business manager, and there was, well, long story made short, Dreyfus got the award. Then in 2016, which I'm sure Joyce, because Joyce was around for that one too, as far as the bid, they also bid against Dreyfus, and Joyce ended up winning, and also they cited the safety committee issue. But Dreyfus provided excellent service to the school district in the interim between 2011 and 2016. So I find it very alarming, you know, that it's very striking in terms of the similarities between Hazleton School District's situation at the time and Luzerne County. So I think that the new council must look into the procurement procedures, as Mr. Morelli pointed out, and Mr. Chair, you just pointed out, that needs to be looked at. Because the council, like Mr. Morelli said, is the governing body. The buck stops with you guys at the end of the day when it comes to the vote. You vote to approve the contract that the manager carries out. The committees, they get all the information. Now, I'm just Joe Schmo that found this information. But I think the committees need to, you know, act in terms of getting that information out to the council, the governing body, because that's why the council is the legislative body, the governing body of the county. So I hope in the future this, you know, I hope the reforms that the new council could look at, new reforms, whether it's by code committee or by an amendment to the charter, can be put in place, because you can't hamstring the manager and future councils. Thank you.
Mr. Orkevich. Would you identify yourself so we can have
Pardon?
would you identify yourself? So we can
Ed
have-
Warkevich,
From?
Humlock Creek.
Very good. Thank you.
Now, the difference between the broker's fee is what, $10,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, Joyce is $10,000 less on the broker's fee. Brown and Brown is a very, very large organization. I'm not here to defend Brown and Brown, but that's a very large organization all over the country, which means they have a lot more negotiating power with companies like Travelers, et cetera. So when it comes to credits, et cetera, it's what's the bottom line of the insurance, not the broker's fee at the end of the year. And I'm sure by the end of the year, Brown and Brown will come with a much lower price than Joyce, based on that. And I know that from experience. I know that from experience about negotiating these prices. So.
Thank you. Mr. Newman?
Good evening. I want to talk about the budget, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time.
You'll have an opportunity to talk about the budget during the voting session.
Okay.
Okay? Before we get to the budget, you'll have an opportunity. Okay? Mr. Carr, or somebody else first? Who was it? Mr. Griffith? Okay.
Good evening. First of all, I want to commend Ms. Hauk for bringing up that issue about Joyce Insurance. I was the controller at the time when that all transpired, and that certificate definitely was not correct, and that's why that all came to light. And they were, in fact, cited by the Insurance Commission for 3 years for their mistake or error in that matter. So that's something to consider, and I appreciate Ms. Sademan's comment about the ethics issue, because that was a concern for her on the ES&S machine. So it should certainly be a concern in this regard as well. Is there's something not ethical about this company. Now, they've corrected it, so, I mean, if you're going to take that into consideration, you should do the same for ES&S as well. But my other concern is, and I know Mr. Morelli has spoken about day-to-day operations of the manager and interfering with the day-to-day operations of the manager. And this is a situation where we have to be really, really careful with council stepping over their boundaries. The manager has the right and the duty to bring those issues to council. We provide funding. If we don't provide the funding for it, the manager should simply use his reconsideration power in the charter to ask council to reconsider your decision. Council doesn't have the power to override the manager's decision. The manager then goes back and does another RFP and another process again and comes back with another bid to the council. That should be the process. When council steps in and says, hey, you know what? We heard somewhere that there's a lower bidder than this. So we're going to tell you that you're not going to take that bidder. We're going to not give the funding for that. That's a pretty dangerous situation for this council to get into. Because now you're telling the manager whatever he does is not important. He can make all the decisions he wants. At the end of the day, this council can override that. That's not what the charter designed. And that's the day-to-day operations that we talk about. Same with the voting machines. There was a ruling made that Dominion was the vendor of choice by the manager, and we had no power, or council had no power to override that. And here we're doing the same thing with Joyce Insurance. We're overriding the decision of the manager to pick Brown & Brown for a vendor who's less money. I mean, you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to tell council they can't interfere with the day-to-day operations, or you can't. He has an obligation to bring the right bid to us. Certainly I have a concern of the fact that he brought a bid to the council which was $10,000 higher, and he's not screaming from the heavens that you guys did not accept his bid. You don't have much faith in the manager if that's the case. Maybe the 10,000 less bid should have came in the first place. Now you have a resolution of reprimand against the manager. He's obviously not taking the best interest of the taxpayers at heart by bringing a $10,000 higher bid to us. But most importantly is, how did somebody find out that there was a lower bidder there? According to Mr. Pedri, there was an email sent out to somebody that said what the prices were. Well, I didn't know anybody had the prices of the other vendors. So if somebody's got the prices of the other vendors and they have an inside track and they have an item to say, well, here's how we're going to do it. We're just going to get 8 people to vote to knock that out of the box. I think those 8 people have an obligation to the people of this county to say why they voted no. Because obviously you weren't supposed to know the price. And you certainly don't know the services. So what was the reason for the no vote? Thank you.
If I may just correct, Mr. Griffith, and we're probably going to disagree on this, and it goes back to my statement before. Again, there's a role of council, and I don't think when we talk about day-to-day operations, going in and telling the manager what to do, how to do it, I think that's where the charter clearly defines of interfering with day-to-day operations. In the sense, I mean, we are here, we have the right to vote no. If not, then why are we even voting on it if we're going to agree with them? And so I think we just disagree in the sense of, again, it's a process here of, do you go with a second person? Could he have came back for reconsideration? He could have. He didn't. Doesn't have to. So I think there's a difference there. The other thing, and again, I'm not trying to be rude, but I have to say this, and I'm not here to defend Joyce either for their mistake or what they did, what was right or not, but you mentioned the fact that you were the controller when this happened. You were also the controller when you had 3 homesteads. You made a mistake. I'm not going to blame you. You made a mistake, but you're going to be on council. Okay, you're going to be on council for making mistakes. and other people made mistakes. Just a couple months ago, we voted on a tax break for Miracle. Mr. Miracle made mistakes as well. I didn't hear anybody say anything. So I'm not here to defend individuals who made mistakes. Again, I'm going to be black and white here. If we are getting apples to apples, and I am saying, because I'm not going to be here for you and all you people, you need more information because it'll clarify more things. But to me, if it's apples to apples, it's saving money, because we're in a couple minutes here, we're going to be debating on this budget and trying to knock it down. So, not trying to be deliberate, but just understanding the big picture of where we're coming from. So,
Mr.
thank
Guam. Mr. Guam.
Having spent too many years sitting on capital review committees and decision committees for billions and billions of dollars, it's an old rule I used to use all the time. When you step in or see or smell mud, it's time to start digging till you find clear water and some more information. Sounds like this is the case. I don't want to sound trite, but if I don't really care so much who wins, so to speak, the insurance contract, so much as performance. I've talked to the former head of data security at IBM, same for HP, friends of mine. I sent them all the news clippings that one of the newspapers presented with regard to the data breach problem. And they just plain couldn't believe how we have basically screwed up this mess. They just plain can't believe it. And we're still not fixed, which says the following. Whoever is going to help you with ensuring our data situation better damn well have experience with integrated systems and ERP systems. I don't think there's too many companies in the area or Northeast Pennsylvania who are experienced in doing that sort of thing. I think this is one of the cases where maybe the insurance company, even if they have IT experience, and I don't know how much or from where, may not be the right appropriate advisor for helping this county get out of our lack of information and experience problem we have within the IT area. Thank you.
Mr. Shiner?
Good evening. I believe in buying local. I also appreciate the philanthropy of the Joyce companies to our area. But that's not what this is about tonight. This is about what's best for Luzerne County as a whole. The manager brings his decisions, his choices to this council for you to either approve or reject. I find it very disheartening that council feels that they should be informed of the different RFPs and the prices involved from the vendors. That's not what this is about. Just as when the vote for the election machines was going to be brought in as you choose the vendor as you vote, and that possibility was removed because it's not the way it's supposed to be done under our government. The manager makes his choice, he brings it. You either accept it or you reject it. And as was said before, at that point, the manager can go back and find another vendor, bring another proposal to this council, whatever. If you want to know what's in an RFP, you all have the same possible way of finding it as I do. Go over to the purchasing department and ask to see it. It's public record. But I don't think it should be distributed out to council as a matter of procedure here. You voted on election machines a week or so ago, and you still don't know what the total price of that is, even for the company you voted for, because it wasn't released. While Joyce Insurance proposal is $10,000 cheaper than Brown & Brown, what is the cost of the insurance going to be? You have no idea. Perhaps in the manager's proposal, he had a better grasp on that. Perhaps that's why he chose Brown & Brown. That's maybe even why the committee did. But I think you either have to go with the manager's suggestions here or find another way to deal with this. But the answer isn't for all the vendors to be brought to you for multiple choice. Also, with the issue of Brown & Brown, the fact that the first problem encountered was during the commissioners, but that carried over into the current home rule situation with the damage to the rotunda and the money that we had to pay because we weren't properly covered for it. And to say at this point that they were partially at fault, well, I believe the document that Ms. Hauk read indicates that they were not just partially at fault. If you're going to consider Joyce, then I would ask you to also consider this. Do any of you have any policies with Joyce Insurance Companies? Do you have any business interaction with the Joyce Insurance Companies? Since 2011, have any of you taken campaign donations from Joyce companies, their owners, or top management staff? I think you have to consider all of these things, and you also have to consider, most importantly, the recommendation from the man you hired to be the county manager. Thank you.
Mr. Carr?
Jason Carr, Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania. I just wanted to support 100% Mr. Councilman Haas's recommendation that we table this decision for the new council members. I'm hopeful that Ms. McDermott, Ms. Rattle, Mr. Urban Jr., and Mr. Griffith bring a different perspective to the thought process of how decisions are made. I also support Mr. Pedri in the decision that he initially made for the insurance broker for the county. The representative for Brown & Brown is here, and I don't think he realizes how decisions are made in Luzerne County. This is one of the most corrupt counties in Pennsylvania. And if you do not know someone, if you do not give someone money, if you're not a relative, you're in a lot of trouble. And this is how politics and this is how decisions are made in this county. And I would like to know, because Brian's question wasn't answered, is anyone a relative, a friend, an acquaintance, does business with, or has accepted political contributions from Joyce Insurance? Because those are the reasons why the county is thinking about moving, not because you're not better.
No.
No. No.
Mr. Bilbo?
I'm friends with them long before I was on council.
Okay. I called you out because I was told you were, so thank you for answering the question.
Let me just say this.
Wait a minute, let Mr. Carr finish, please, okay?
This is called coal mine politics, where a few decide which direction the county goes in, even overriding the manager. And hopefully, the 4 new council members do and represent the right agenda for the taxpayers of this county.
After Mr. Bilbo, I need to say something.
Yep, Mr. Bilbo, you want to?
Oh, I just wanted to directly address Mr. Carr that long before I even had any inkling that I would ever be seated in a Luzerne councilman's chair, I had a very, very close personal friendship with their brother that has since passed away, Michael Joyce. And anyone that knows me or that you would even ask about me would tell you that. So that's not something I'm going to deny to you, or that's something I'm, to be honest with you, extremely proud of my friendship with them. So to answer your question, yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Just real quick, it's coming up here now of us just taking the recommendation of the manager, and again, no disrespect, Mr. Pedri, but if that's the case, let's make it a fast meeting, let's take his recommendation for the budget, vote on it, and no disagreements, and it'll be fast. I'm not suggesting that, but you understand my point. Well, you understand my point there.
Yes,
I'm not seriously doing that, but again, let's go back, there is a purpose for county council here, and I think Mr. Pedri knows that, but just making it.
Yeah, and I will say that, I mean, I was never going to support a contract during budget season without knowing what else is out there. So no one knew Joyce was even submitted until the manager suggested it. So I think we all learned a lot tonight, but that's why we tabled the vote last time, is to learn things and to make adjustments from there.
Very good. Mr. Newman first.
This is on the item.
Good.
John Newman from Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. In my 33 years with the U.S. Postal Service, 26 of them as a manager, which included about 5 years as a contracting officer. When you make your selection, there are two items, two component parts: responsiveness and responsibility. Now, responsiveness is the offerer or the bidder responsive to the terms of the solicitation, whether it's an RFP or an IFB. If they've met all the terms in the solicitation, then you consider responsibility. Now, responsibility can be a number of things. Past practice, perhaps being the number one item. Have they been a contractor or a vendor before, and how did they perform? That's responsiveness. If dollars and cents are an issue, then dollars and cents must be considered. But past practice has to be perhaps the number one item. Now, knowing the county manager and some of his staff as I do, I believe they've probably done their due diligence. I'm not sure if anybody else sitting up here has done the in-depth due diligence that perhaps Mr. Pedri and his staff have done. So, if he's the selecting official and he has done his due diligence and he has considered past practice, perhaps you may want to go with his recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Joe McCabe from Exeter. You know, I'm listening to council members. I'm listening to Mr. Pedri. Linda Hulk is probably the senior member on council. Has ever issues like this ever happened again on somebody's pointing the finger at Dave? You don't have the final say on it. Between council members and the manager, what is the right way to do it? You know, you can vote and say, yeah, we're going to vote Joyce down tonight, but I don't think it's fair until you guys decide who has the final say on making a decision like this. On other matters, too, I've seen in the last couple of weeks that money was dispersed and it was all in the hands of the manager, and, you know, you see the articles in the paper, which I'm not going to bring up now because it's not a matter of between Joyce and that, but I'm just getting tired of reading who has the final say on stuff like this. Maybe you can answer it, the manager can answer and say, give me an answer on who has the final say on an issue like this. Thank you.
Okay. Obviously, it's a multi-year contract, more than $25,000, right? Correct.
Correct.
So it does come to the council?
For an unbudgeted year, correct.
Okay. That's your answer, Mr. McCabe.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Just so we have the record correct, your name again, please.
Paul Piergiali, Brown & Brown Insurance.
Thank you.
As the elephant in the room, I figured I'd come up and say a few things. The main point I wanted to address is about what happens with the insurance. It was suggested that possibly, if it was council's desire to postpone this into the new council, well, these policies will be put in place before the end of the year, and then they'll be in effect. And we would be willing to stay on, even without a contract, until such meeting was decided, if that's what council wanted to do. So I just kind of wanted to make that point clear, that is something we could accommodate. We certainly appreciate your business, and you know, if that helps anybody make anybody's mind up, we would certainly be happy to do that. So
I just have one question for you, since you're at the podium.
yeah.
Because there were some statements made a little earlier. Back in 2013 was the first year that you were awarded the contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you have any ties to Luzerne County prior to that?
No.
Did you know anybody on council?
No, we
Wait, if you would just answer and then I'll let you make a statement if you
Yeah.
wish. Okay?
No, we were
And-
brought in by the risk manager, not brought in, but we were interviewed by the risk manager and other county people at the
Yeah.
time.
So you had no ties, you had no connections,
No.
you had no one that
It
you
was a
really
different-
knew
completely
except
different council
maybe
too
by
at the
face
time.
or something. You know, there were no friends or relationships. And you had no campaign contributions to worry
No,
about?
absolutely not.
So a lot of what was said in your situation in 2013 didn't apply.
I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying.
I mean, you didn't have any friends.
Correct.
You didn't have any relatives, you didn't
Correct.
have any relations, you didn't have any
Correct.
campaign contributions. None of that applied to you or
That's
your
correct.
group.
That's correct. Yeah,
Correct?
We, as far as my understanding, we won on the merits.
Yeah, okay.
And
Very good.
And our fee was less too, but a lot more than 10,000. It was
Your
like,
fee was a lot higher at that point, too.
correct. And
Right.
as I said previously, we have reduced that fee.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it when you did come to
Yes.
the podium
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, maybe.
The only other thing I wanted to point out is that just the way things went, the entire council has not seen, this is our entire RFP response. So it's several inches thick. And it was impossible to cover all that. That's why I gave everybody a recap.
Mhm.
But there's a lot more meat
A lot
in
more
here.
in depth.
And in fact, one of the things that is in here is a 30 or 40 page cyber assessment for the county, because I know that's obviously a hot topic. So anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So unless anybody has any questions.
Questions?
Could I just have one, Mr. Chairman?
Sure,
So again,
absolutely.
Mr. Buccioli, thank you for coming again. How much did Brown & Brown, through the brokerage, save us in the cyber attack? Just for the record, just for
Well,
feedback.
like I said, we reduced the deductible from 150,000 to 10,000 in 2017. So
It's $140,000.
that's $140,000 savings.
Very good.
One other thing too, I just recalled that there's something that when you're a self-insured municipality, you have to be certified by the Department of Labor and Industry annually, and you have to do an annual report to the state. And we have someone in our office that signs off on that. So it's the Accident and Illness Prevention Provider Certification. And it is different from a Safety Committee certification. So I don't know if they offer that or not, but I do know in the past, the brokers prior to us did not have that. And so the county was paying an additional $8,000 or $9,000 a year just to have that person sign off on the report. So I just leave you with that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Any other public comment? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Wickes, Ms. Seidman, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, we get into the meat of the meeting, this evening's meeting. A couple things to accomplish this evening. I do plan at several points in the meeting to take a break in order for people to get refreshed and allow, when we get to the budget amendments, people to catch up with the amendments on the screen, etc. So we'll get to the meeting. We'll call call to order. We'll have a moment, and we'll have a pledge, and then we'll have the moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Bilbo?
Present.
Mr. Haas?
Here.
Ms. Hauk? Here. Mr. Morelli?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Ms. Sedman? Here. Mr. Schnee?
Present.
Mr. Urban? Here. Mr. Vogt?
Here.
Ms. Wakes? Present. Mr. McGinley?
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Recognition, ceremony, proclamations. We have none this evening. Any additions or deletions to the voting agenda? We have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Rowe, Ms. Saban, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carried. Public comment in regards to agenda items. Mr. Raybo?
Yes, this is involving agenda item number 1. As I said, I hope that this council will leave it to the next council, because I believe, like the voting machines and like the 911 contract with Motorola, I believe those two should be left for the new council, because they go well into a new term of council, an incoming council. So I believe those two should be looked at by the new council, like the vote on this insurance. For the budget amendments, I brought up last week with respect to the 911, as I have for previous years, including in public hearings on the budget for the past 3 years at least, I always state to the council, please look for money that you already have, within the budget that hasn't been utilized, or that is an overage, or something that isn't being utilized. I brought up the $8 million of UDAG money. That is an eligible use because it's for emergency services and it's a one-time purchase. So I believe that $8 million can be used for the equipment for the 911, for the portables and the receivers, for those municipalities. Now, will it cover all of it? No, it won't. But $8 million covers a huge chunk of that cost. So I think that is something to be really considered and taken into account, because I think that would save the county a lot of money, especially in the long run. Also, with respect to the management staff, and I've been saying this, and I know Mr. Shikoski's here, and he heard me say this for many years, as well as the current council, about the reimbursement from AOPC and the legislature with respect to their constitutional obligation to fund the court staff, which they haven't. $500,000 is anemic. They should have reimbursed $2 million, because this county sends down $10 million on average every year to Harrisburg, and they give $500,000 back. In the 1996 agreement, the Montemuro agreement, it says up to 20%. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, like I said, $10 million, 20% of $10 million is $2 million. So that needs to be looked at by the legislative committee. Also, with respect to the money that comes in, I'm finishing up, Mr. McGinley. For the money that is supposed to be owed in other fees to the county with regards to 911. That hasn't been dealt with, or hasn't been addressed. So I think those need to be taken up with our state legislatures, especially next year, because this is unsustainable, and it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Griffith?
real quickly, I'm going to address item number 1 on the agenda as well. I think if council's not going to postpone this vote until the new council's seated, then the prevailing side needs to make a motion to change their vote and go with the Brown & Brown contract. I think Brown & Brown has proven their service to this county has been exemplary. We haven't had any problems based on the fact that we never anticipated a cyber attack clearly, and their ability to save us the $140,000 should be kudos to them for sure. But I think if in fact this council feels it's in the best interest of the taxpayers not to postpone this until the new council's seated, I think the next appropriate step is to rescind the vote of the 8 and re-vote for the Brown & Brown contract. Thank you.
Mr. Shiner and then Mr. Newman.
In regards to the budget, I would strongly urge you to follow the amendment made by Ms. Waitkus to remove the merit increases. If you're going to ask the people of this county to pay more money in their property taxes, then I don't really feel you should be giving merit raises to the management. Especially when you look at things like in the operations division, we are still having the majority of our subdivision and land development reviews done by outside engineering companies. We lost about $200,000 in revenue this year, just in that alone. So please give this some considerate thought. Eliminate any merit raises this year if you're going to allow an increase in our property taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Newman?
Yes, John Newman, Nanticoke, one more time. In terms of the budget, I'd like to address a very important component of the budget called the Employee Retirement Fund. Okay. Now, I know you've had some deliberations about it, and there were some suggestions made, but I would plead with you, don't mess with the Employees Retirement Fund, okay? And I've given each of you a position paper. Hope you will read it, and I'll also give it to the new council people. The impact of attrition on the retirement fund, okay? Very important item. Now, and I need to tell you this up front, I'm not a deficit hawk. I don't like tax increases, but sometimes they're a necessary evil. Hopefully, you can keep the millage as low as possible. And I think you'll all do a good job in that. But don't get caught with the intentions or with the position that, oh, we can attrit employees. We can attrit employees to save money. Okay. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. But it's a double-edged sword. It is a double-edged sword because as people, senior people attrit, they withdraw from the retirement fund. And while they're working, they contribute to that retirement fund. So you are losing employees, but you're losing contribution. And if you don't hire back to a certain degree, where's the contribution going to come from? And even if you do hire back, you're hiring lower end people at entry level. And they're not going to contribute to what that senior person was contributing.
Excuse me, could somebody turn that off?
That doesn't affect my 3 minutes, does it?
No, it doesn't affect your 3 minutes, but it is distracting. Thank you. Go ahead.
So, you have to pay attention to contribution. If you don't, and the only place you're going to get it is from employees. They come in at entry level, they're not going to contribute what that senior person contributed. So, be careful when, and this is a cautionary, be careful when in your deliberations that you don't go overboard on attrition and hiring freezes. Perhaps a pause for every 3 that you attrit, hire back 1. Take it slow, but don't lose sight of the fact that if you don't pay me now, you'll pay me later. Okay? I guess that's the best way I can end. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Ms. McCabe first.
Yeah, Joe McCabe, once again on the budget. Like I said before, I had a couple things I seen in the paper which I disagree on. Probably a lot of people on the council disagrees on. When the vacancy came in the election bureau, you hired a person that had too much experience on the job and paid her $12,000 more. I disagree, and everybody in this room would probably disagree. You start from the bottom and work your way up, and prove yourself on the job. Mr. Alu, I graduated school with Mr. Alu. He's probably down there 40 years. And you paid somebody to do his job for like $60 or $1,000 less. Let the guy start his way, work his way up. And back in July, when you hired the lobbyist, there's $60-some thousand there.
Excuse me, Ms. McCabe.
It's the budget items.
It's not, it's.
But your shortfall right now, and that's what I'm saying,
understand
small
what you're
things
saying.
lead up into
Just so
the
you-
millions of dollars that you're in the hole right now. Thank you.
Just so you understand, we don't hire those people. That falls in the executive branch, and the manager's the person, the
Well,
final
I'm just
say.
saying, things should be changed,
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. What I'm saying is, it's clear that it's a part of the executive branch, and that's the authority of the
That's
manager.
why you're a couple millions and millions of dollars in the hole right now, because you gotta start small and work your way up the ladder.
Herman?
John's absolutely right about being careful what you wish for with regard to retirement. Two different issues here. One is, in the few budget hearings that I attended, at least 3 times I heard the phrase, the good news is, let's do the good news first. Good news is, finally, in the history of this county, we're finally doing something really exceedingly smart, which is sharing people instead of a real stovepipe organization structure here in the county. Should have been done a long time ago, but the good news is it's happening. The bad news is that all the presentations that talked about doing this called a revenue item when they, for the dollars that represent a piece of a person loaned out to another organization. That's accounting blasphemy. There's no way in the world, and Rick's got the accounting, the advanced accounting, he'll tell you. There's no way in the definition of revenue, I don't care in what language you read it, where expense transfers are revenue. That's got to get fixed before this budget. It changes all the metrics for future years as well. Standard gap treatment, and everybody's ERP system comes with a standard stub of accounts. The 98 account is for transfers in from another organization. 99 account is for transfers out. That's the only way to treat that. And if you want to know how to handle the actual headcount reporting of that, you can just talk to me after. I'm really curious as to what the equivalent headcount will be a schedule when you finish this budget finally that shows FY19 equivalent head or 18 equivalent head actuals and the actual headcount forecast for FY19 and comparables by department, and then the FY20 average budget for that, to see where we're really going here. John and I have a little bit different definition about what a freeze means in terms of headcount. When you have a large organization as big as this, there are people who are being stifled left and right. They're not growing. And a freeze can be a positive rather than a negative. What you do is, IBM does this to their VPs. They chop off 10% of them every year. What you do is you provide openings that allow people to move up.
Okay, could you finish up, please?
Yep. So I'd be really interested in that. Again, most of your money is in headcount. For some reason, we continue to do the nickel dime. Let's look at an account. Oh, lastly, budgets at this size of a budget, $250 million, and we're doing budgets to the dollar. It's just prone to making artificial errors. Should be at to the nearest $1,000 and nearest $100, and you can be able to see the numbers much more readily. Thank you.
Mr. Carr?
Jason Carp, Sailorsburg, Pennsylvania. I would just like to support the amendment by Ms. Wakis to forego any merit increases for any management within the county. When you think about it, the median income for a family of 4 in Luzerne County is about $33,000. Most administrators that sit behind me right now make approximately, on average, over $95,000.
That's wrong, Jason.
No?
Jason.
So, for instance, Brian just told me his salary, $91,600.
You can't say an average of $95,000. Nobody here makes more than $95,000.
Brian makes
Yeah,
$91,600.
but you can't say $95,000, Jason. I mean, like, okay, but I don't want you to talk through.
But you tell me, what's the average then?
I couldn't tell you. I didn't interrupt you. It's
Then
less,
my number must be right.
It's less than $95,000.
Mr. Carr, would you please get back to your comment?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the average family of 4 in Luzerne County makes median income, family of 4, $33,000. Mr. Sweats makes $91,600. How can we justify, with an impending tax increase, giving administration a 2% merit increase? I just want to make something perfectly clear, and I think the electorate spoke in the last election that I think they're tired of the politics as usual that have gone on over the last 4 years. And I hope it's clear that we do not work for Luzerne County. You serve us. And thinking about it, what have I gotten for all my tax increases over the last decade? We still have $260 million worth of debt. We have $100 million in pension obligations, and I'm looking at a tax increase by the end of the night. So I just want to thank everyone sitting here tonight. You've done a great job. And if anyone can add, lastly, what was the decision, or what was the reason behind considering Joyce over Mr. Pedri's? I've missed it. I've not been listening. What was the reason behind going with Joyce rather than the manager's recommendation?
Quick question. You said that we report to you. Do you actually live in Luzerne County or vote in Luzerne County?
No, Mr. Morelli, I absolutely do not live.
Clarify.
But Mr. Morelli, Mr. Morelli, I pay more taxes than you in Luzerne County.
I'm happy that you do.
Okay?
That's good.
I do have a voice. But
I
that's
appreciate the voice
the
of the
prevalent argument between here and the city of Wilkes-Barre when I speak out there, is I don't live here. But you know what, Mr. Morelli? I pay taxes here. Okay?
Respect that.
Okay, please do. I pay more than you.
I understand, but be careful with your words. With average
Don't
salary,
tell me anything.
Average salary.
Whoa,
Don't tell me anything.
time
Please.
out, time out.
Everybody's political, everybody's
Please.
bad. I mean, you made some very strong statements, and I'm going to
Thank
step
you.
up for the people of the county and the council. That's all.
Thank you.
Respect it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Motion to approve the minutes of the December 3rd meeting.
So moved.
Ms. Wakes, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Perry? On the question?
The motion to table, Mr. Chair, based on what I've said earlier and some of the
Minutes.
comments that were made.
On the minutes?
Just a minute.
I take
On the
that back.
minutes?
No, not
Table the
minutes.
minutes?
I support the minutes. Sorry.
On the question, anyone else? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition?
Yeah, no, they're not verbatim.
Mr. Urban, any abstentions? None heard. Moving on to the page 2. Agenda item number 1, a motion to adopt the resolution approving the contract with broker for Joyce Insurance Group for insurance brokerage services for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to table, since Brown & Brown said that all the contracts will be in place by the end of the year, let the new council. deal with
Mr. Urban, you made a motion to table. Do we have a second to Mr. Urban's motion?
Second, Mr. Chair, this time.
It has been tabled, right? It was tabled last meeting, so we don't need another motion to table. Do we have a motion to take it off the table?
it. So moved.
To take it off the table?
No, not take it off, no.
We had a motion the last meeting to
I
table.
thought you voted last meeting
it's a
too.
different resolution.
You voted against it. No, this is a different resolution. This is totally different.
It's a different resolution.
You voted on
There's a
Brown &
different
Brown at the
vendor
last
on
meeting.
it. Yeah, he's right.
No, we had a motion when we got when the manager said Joyce, we had a motion to table.
No, he didn't say Joyce.
Yes, we did, but now this is not the same resolution.
It's not the same resolution, but we still have that motion tabled from last meeting,
To approve Joyce and Joyce.
right?
Okay.
So
We didn't have
we
a
need a
resolution
motion to
prepared.
take it off the table if we're going to proceed with the vote. Last meeting, when we got to the insurance, Brown & Brown's motion was not successful. We then had a recommendation from the manager for the Joyce. That was tabled. So now we're at that point. Do we want to take it off the table? If I don't hear anything, it stays tabled. Correct?
Correct?
Wait, stays table?
It stays tabled, because it was tabled the last meeting. We need a motion to take it off the table if we want to proceed with the vote.
I'll make that motion.
You'll make that motion, Mr. Vo, to take it off the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Wakes? So we have a motion to take that off the table. On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Bilbo?
Abstain.
Mr. Haas?
No.
Ms. Hauk?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vo?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes? Yes. Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
6 yes, 4 no, 1 abstention.
6 yes, 4 no, 1 abstention. We now go to the motion. Do we have a motion to adopt a resolution approving a contract for the broker, the Choice Insurance Group for insurance brokerage services for fiscal year 2020, 2021? Do we have a motion for that resolution?
So.
Mr. Schnee?
Isn't that what we?
Just procedurally, I don't think you need a motion, because the motion was there. The motion was already made, right?
I believe we need a motion.
Well, it was tabled, there was a vote.
Right, we brought it off the table,
Table,
but
okay.
now the motion, the original motion stands again, right?
The original motion stands.
Yes.
Okay. We had a motion before we had the table last time, so the motion is in effect, and we had a second on the question.
Make the
Yes.
motion. Oh,
Ms. Howard?
Go ahead.
Oh,
No,
you're right.
okay. Well, I just want to say, I think I said pretty much everything I had to say during the work session, except this. You know, the issue is not whether we want Brown & Brown or Joyce. That's because what's on in front of us right now is, are you going to vote for Joyce? All I can say is that Brown and Brown did have a record of saving us $140,000, as opposed to Joyce, which cost us $216,000 and has a record of falsifying certificates for us. So I'm voting no.
Mr. Haas?
I was going to make a motion to postpone this for the new council based on the precedent and based on a lot of discussion we had tonight.
I'll second.
Ms. Corcoran, we have a motion to postpone.
Second.
Mr. Haas, Ms. Haug. On that question, postponement. Roll call.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Ms. Wakus?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
Abstain.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
3 yes.
Motion for postpone fails. On the question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Linda, for your due diligence, finding out all the information. I only knew of one, I didn't know the second one. But I'm with Mr. Morelli. And people make mistakes, companies make mistakes. We've dealt with both of them. We all make mistakes. I believe they deserve another chance. They've reorganized a little bit better from last time. Don't forget, it's about 7 years ago when this whole thing took place. I believe I'm going to give them a chance, and it's $10,000 cheaper. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, and again, I'm not going to rehash, I said a number of things before, but again, it does come down to cost. We're going to be debating things. To apples, it's the same process. It's basically the same from Mr. Pedri said, and I think I'm actually being consistent from before. Nothing against Brown and Brown. I think they're a great company, but you can check. I believe last time we voted, I didn't support them, and I did go with a local company, which wasn't Joyce. So at least I'm consistent there with our local individuals, so local companies.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes, because I want to save $10,000.
Mr. Bilbo?
Abstain.
Mr. Haas?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes?
3 noes, 7 yes.
7 yes, 3 noes, 1 abstention. Motion carried. Okay. We're moving to the budget amendments. You have a document in front of you. I want to thank the young lady who's coming up to the chair here in front. She's the one that did all the typing and did a lot of work there, so that was great of her. What I propose is we'll go through the first 2 sheets, and then we will take a break. Because at that point, I think we'll be well past a couple hours, and we probably need to take a chance to go to the lavatory and refresh yourself. So we'll start at the top, under general government. Ms. Howe, you want to speak to your amendment?
I think I did last week, but it was just to reduce the miscellaneous expenses.
Okay.
Because we didn't use them.
Questions for Ms. Howe? We have a motion for that budget amendment. Do we have a second for Ms. Howe?
Second.
Second, Ms. Wakus. On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Morelli?
Just for clarification here, we are starting on number 1, correct?
Number 1, Ms. Howe, general
through all this.
government, miscellaneous expense.
Sorry, just let me get settled here. And the first 3 are under
General government.
Okay.
Actually, the first one is council's budget. The other 2 are the
Yeah.
control.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Going down to the next one, which is one of the ones I submitted. Special legal, $6,500 is the proposal, $5,000 is the new request, would save us $1,500. And that's because that seems to be in line with what we've spent in the past there.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Urban and Mr. Snee, on the question?
One clarification, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify the process, so what we're doing, we're just voting on whether or not to forward these amendments to be voted upon?
No, we're voting on the amendment up or down.
So can we have a count then of if they pass or not?
It passed.
Do that? Okay. I just didn't
Yeah,
hear
it
that.
passed. 9-2.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Is that what you needed?
Yep, that's what I needed.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous. 11-0.
11-0. Going down to the next one, that's other contractual. Again, that seems to be the number that we've been using. $1,000, $500 seems more in line with the
So
past.
moved.
Second.
Mr. Snee and Mr. Urban, on the question, roll call, please.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
11-0.
Okay, going down to the next group, under solicitor. The first one I submitted was other contractual. The proposal was $90,000. The request I'm submitting is $78,000. That would be a $12,000 savings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms.
On the
Wakes?
question,
Yes.
just for clarification, again,
Go
as we
ahead.
move forward here, as I'm looking at this, so like, for example, now we're on 4, we're voting on 4.
Yes.
If this is approved, 12,000, and then if we go to number 5, which is Linda's motion, and if that's approved, then we're adding 72,000, just so.
Well, we
It's
would
the
go
same,
down
it's the
to-
same
yes.
item here, just
Yes.
so I think everyone's
correct.
aware
So
here.
you
It's more of one or the other.
You have to
just
be-
so we're, yes,
Yes.
that's why, again, so
Ms.
make the
Wakes?
decision.
So our vote, in a sense, could trump the next coming
Yeah,
amendment.
Well,
there could
actually-
be multiple situations.
You're still gonna vote on yours.
Right.
What I think
Right.
we should, and this is just my suggestion, is that if Mr. McGinley makes his motion, I make a motion to amend it. So then you vote on the amendment. If the amendment
Yeah.
doesn't pass, then
All
you
right.
do the original motion.
We could do that.
That's fine.
So Ms. Wakes made the motion. Who made the second, Mr. Bilbo? Or Mr. Urban?
Mr. Urban.
Mr. Urban, okay.
Don't confuse us.
On the question?
I'd like to make an amendment to,
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. And now Mr. Hopkins is going to make an amendment, please. Go ahead.
I'd like to amend that amount to reduce it by 60,000.
Second.
And who was the second? Mr. Haas? So Ms. Hauk and Mr. Haas made a amendment to go with 90,000 down to 30,000, which would be $60,000 savings, correct?
Yes.
On that amendment, any question? Roll call on the amendment.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Ms. Wakus?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
To amend.
You're voting on the amendment that you just seconded.
Yes, yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
5 yes.
5 yes, 6 no. Amendment fails. We're going back to the original motion, 90,000 down to 78,000. Roll call?
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Moving down to number 6, amendment number 6, subscriptions. The proposed was $18,280, and the new number would be $9,280, which would be a savings of $9,000.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wakes and Mr. Urban. On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Vogt,
Yes?
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
11-0.
Moving down to amendment number 7, budget and finance. Ms. Hauk?
This is to remove the, to reduce the other contractual services by $135,000 from 511 to 376.
And this is the ADP, is what you're, is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Do we have a second for Ms.
Second
Hauk?
that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Haas? On the question?
On the question, I would just point out that that's $135,000 going to New Jersey, not local, every year.
Anyone else? Roll call.
Oh, wait, I got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you just, is this the one that ADP, we aren't going to go ahead
We
with?
would go back to doing what we did for 200 years, which is pay payroll in-house.
Okay.
And not spend $135,000 with no, residual savings to counteract it. It was strictly a payment out. It is strictly a payment out the door right now.
Well, Mr. Pedri's employees, that after we got the contract, and they used to do payroll, they're probably doing something else now?
Well, it's a unified payroll now, and that was the big complaint, that we needed to unify the payroll. So now instead of having 6 different payrolls, we have one.
Okay.
And, having it in-house would reduce some of the consternation that there was around holiday time when the company was deciding that they were gonna pay the employees after the holiday instead of before, which was always the practice here.
But we
So-
did pay them before.
We did, yes, we did. But there was a little bit of confusion about that.
And if I may, I never spoke about this before, and I'm just going to tell you, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I get the local thing, but to me, this is one of those things where it's investing in the future, making this county more efficient, going to the next generation. So I get that, I respect everything you're saying, but again, when you look at most other municipalities, most businesses, everyone has a program like this rather than doing it inside. And I do remember, too, in the past, we've had some problems here in-house. So I think it's just, from what I understand, I did ask some questions about being more efficient and effective. So I understand, but.
Even though non-local. Just-
Well,
just so we got it.
I
Okay.
understand that, but.
That's all right.
Well, if you're saying there's software companies local, then that you bid on, that's another thing, but that's not what the issue here is. It's individual, it's a different service. That's clearly different. It's apples and oranges.
Question?
Mr. Chair, yeah, just a comment too, and generally speaking, what we've seen here, when we've seen increased payments, and increased efficiency, we generally see actually net savings. And again, what this does, this pays for a service, it doesn't net any savings for taxpayers for Luzerne County.
And as I remember the discussion when we talked about that, which was rather lengthy and detailed, I think there were some questions about whether anybody would lose their job or lose their position. And the answer to that was no. But people would be reassigned to do other parts of budget and finance. And that was part of the discussion at that point in time.
And subsequently, we did have a late audit, even despite having the contract.
Yes, we did. We had a late audit, and you're correct about that. And we, last week when we met with the audit people, we talked about that.
That's right, and hats off to the staff. But again, I'm just saying that this cost did not, in this case, didn't yield any savings for us, nor did it, in that case, net any efficiency.
I don't know about the efficiency side. Savings, no.
Well, I would also say that if what we needed was another person to work in budget and finance, you could have hired someone at a lot less than $135,000 a year to do it.
I don't think that was the question, though.
No, it wasn't the question.
I don't think that was.
The question was that we wanted to, management wanted to outsource the payroll work.
We have an outsourced payroll.
You have outsourced the work.
We have not outsourced payroll.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
When that originally came up, it was questionable. It was recommended by the manager for staff. Over this 4-year period, we've done many of votes. That one vote was always the one that came back to me that I wouldn't vote for that again, and I'm not voting for that tonight.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. Roll call.
Ms. Wakers?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Nope.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vo?
No?
Mr. McGinley?
No.
4 yes.
4 yes, 7 no. Moving down to other contractual services, Mr. Haas, number 8.
Yep, that $21,000 coming from Budget and Finance, that was held essentially there in reserve just in case we needed extra help with preparing the audit, and that has not been tapped to in years past. And I think especially if we're going to stick around with ADP, that does supposedly free up people in the office to actually focus more on those duties. So I would say I ask council support to take $21,000 out of the budget.
Mr. Haas makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Urban? On the question. Mr. Sweats, this is money that you said was used for audit support, I believe?
Yes, at the audit committee meeting, and I realized it wasn't this meeting, it was the audit committee meeting, one of the things was additional audit support for some of the things like refinancing, some of the things that we don't handle on a year-to-year basis that the auditors have helped us with. And in prior years, that was to hit the timeline. And again, we are aware we didn't hit that timeline this year, and that the timeline has always been June 30th. But it's something that, if we don't use it, it falls to the bottom line, and it's there to help us hit the timeline if we need the additional help.
Have we used it in the past? Have we used that funding in the past?
We used the funding in the past on the due to from audits. We've used the past, just last year. We used the funding in the past to have Baker Tilly do some work when they first started. It is not used every year, but it's been used at least 2/3 of the time.
Okay. Anyone else with a question?
No, just a comment. You got a reserve fund in case you need this money. You can take some money out of the reserve fund. What do you have, 400,000 in the reserve fund?
500, in this budget, there's 500,000.
500,000 in the reserve fund, so 21,000.
Yeah, we will get to that. That'll be one of the items a little later.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second to remove $21,000 from the Budget and Finance for additional audit services, correct? Roll call?
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vo?
No?
Ms. Wakers?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
3 yes.
3 yes,
No.
8 no. Thank you. Moving down to the next item, number 9. This is parking, and as a result of an RFP that was put out to the community at large, there were some savings recognized by that RFP. Am I correct in that, Mr. Sweat?
Yes, an RFP was put out, and there was a $5 savings per spot. This is prorated between the budget and finance line here, 4176, and probation later on.
Okay.
This is the spot.
Mr. Schnee, do we have a second? Ms. Wakes? On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vo?
Yes?
Ms. Wakers?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Moving down to item number 10, under administration, wages non-rep. Ms. Hauk?
This was to reduce the, to only fill one of the proposed IT positions. So instead of filling 2, it would reduce the cost by $50,000.
And that's the salary only, correct?
Right. There would also be some savings in the payroll liabilities lines, but then the other ones, the next one actually would follow that because it would reduce the amount of the other communication expenses for cell phone
Okay.
reimbursement.
Very good.
Second.
Snee and Ms. Wakes. Any other questions?
I just want to say, if that's what it's for, I think I mentioned at the time, when the tech technology guy came and he made the speech for it. He made a valid choice, but I think, again, this is part of the budget season, and I think there's more reasons to, I think we can live with one, so I'll be supporting this.
Very good. Roll call?
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
11-0.
11-0. Ms. Hauk, you want to?
This would take out the $480 that was allocated for cell phone reimbursement for the second employee.
Very
So
good.
moved.
Second.
Mr. Sneed, Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Ms. Hauk, number 12?
Yeah, actually, this one I want to withdraw because that was the one that I didn't have an explanation for why it was there, and what they explained to me last week was that the
Okay,
money
then
had been there.
we'll withdraw it. Thank you.
Withdraw it.
Moving down to the next item, 13, insurance liability casualty. This is the $10,000 that would be as a result of the brokerage fee change. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Wakes, Mr. Snee. On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Abstain.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
10 with 1 abstention.
And with one abstention. Moving down to the next group, judicial. Ms. Hauk?
This is the wages non-representative. I don't know.
This is
Makes
the,
a difference in the coroner's office, I
This is the
believe.
coroner's
Right.
office. The
Right.
correct, the correct number is
Yeah,
141.
this is the correct number, and that was per our discussion in the work session, right?
And you can see number 15 is exactly the same, but has a different name in front, so we won't bother with 15, we'll just do 14.
Move, Mr. Manager.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hauk and Mr. Haas?
Chair.
Is that correct? Okay. On the question? Roll call.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Like I said, we'll skip 15 because it's just a repeat. 16, repairs of the main buildings. This is the record storage building. There was a proposal there to do $3,000 in lighting. Speaking with the manager, that is a project that can be done under the energy savings project. So it doesn't have to be taken out of the general budget, it can be taken out of the capital budget. It was set aside for the energy savings.
So moved.
Ms. Wakes? And Mr. Bilbo? Roll call?
I'd like to offer an amendment to that.
Okay.
To reduce it by $10,000 to take out that contract for the cleaning service and have the cleaning done by existing employees.
Okay, I think the contract, if I remember correctly, was like $6,200.
Right, so that combined with your 3,000 would take us to
92?
just about, yeah, it would take us to about 10,000.
Okay. Ms. Hauk makes that motion. Do we have a second?
So moved.
Ms. Seidman? This is on the amendment only, to take from the $20,000 proposed down to $10,000, which would include the lighting that we had a motion on prior. Okay? On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay, then we don't have to go back and revisit the first one because that was part of the amendment that we just passed, okay? Moving down under debt service, Ms. Hauk?
Can I just, do we actually vote on that amendment, or was that just the amendment?
Voted.
Just the amendment.
Prior to
So
the-
we should vote on a motion with the amendment then,
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Prior-
Ms.
prior-
Wakes, will you
Yes.
make that motion with the amendment? Mr. Bilbao, will you second that? Yes. Okay.
Okay, prior to the council voting on this, I want to be clear, there's some other amendments in here that I've reviewed. This was this contract that came up in front of county council for $6,200, came up in front of council. Council members recommended that I add a AFSCME position to this budget. I see in later amendments, you've asked to take that position out. So now we're taking that position out, and we've taken out the $6,200 that we're using to clean this building at this point. So what we're going to have to do is get a Luzerne County employee in building and grounds where we already have openings, where we already have difficult time finding employees. Put them in a county car, which is going to raise our county insurance, drive them down to Hanover, pay for that gas to drive them to Hanover, have them clean that building when they're not cleaning other buildings, so that means that they're going to probably have to do overtime in order to do the other buildings, put them back into the car, drive them back to the courthouse in order to finish. Just so we're clear, that $6,200, may be, penny wise and dollar foolish. I don't know if it's the best idea, especially if we're not going to later actually add a position, the custodian, which was the original recommendation of this county council. Now we're cutting that position and we're cutting the contract.
How many vacancies you have open in custodian?
I couldn't tell you. Mr. One.
You got one open, okay. Fill it.
That's the opening.
Okay, we still have the motion and we have a second.
Right, on the question,
Yes, sir.
that position was pushed by myself and Mrs. Howard.
Yep.
After we got the numbers, but they're very shorthanded to begin with. If we place somebody there, that doesn't mean that's the only place that they go. We have other buildings, especially this building, where we're tremendously shorthanded. I mean, it's a little double-edged sword here, like either we push for the position, Ms. Elk, or...
Well, we didn't get to the positions in
No,
building and grounds yet.
Yeah.
That vote is yet to come.
And we can go back and revisit if we have to.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second with the approved amendment. Okay? Roll call.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
I have to say no, because I do think we need some way to clean that building.
7 yes, 4 no.
7 yes, 4 no, the motion carries. So as a result of the votes that happened there, the $20,000 is now $10,000. Okay? Moving down to the debt. Ms. Hauk?
This was, actually, I changed it, I revised it last week to go with what you have there. So let's vote on your amendment,
Okay.
because those were the correct numbers.
So we'll skip
taking the
18
time. Yep,
and go to 19.
yes.
And as Ms. Hauk indicated, after the information was provided to us, the savings from the refinancing and some of the other expenses that were involved with the TRAN, the actual savings was $637,000, and that's what you see there. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Sneen and Ms. Wakes? On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay, going down to item number 20, non-government units, $6,505,146 to $6,456,149. That would result in a savings of $49,000.
Brian, you might want to address that?
That one should actually be the increase of 49,000 for the additional 5% for LCTA. It's the two below it would be decreases. That would actually be an increase. When I presented
So
last week,
$6,505,146 should be $6,550,000.
the two columns are flip-flopped. It's still 49,000. It's a 49,000 increase, and it's due to get our correct match for LCTA and for
So
Hazleton Transit.
$6,505,000 is $6,550,000. 54?
In the book is 6456, and we need to be 6505. We need to add.
Sorry.
Yep. We need to add 49,000.
All right, those numbers are reversed in the columns,
Yes.
and it results in a $49,000 increase
Increase in
because
expenses.
of the
To-
$5,000 the state requires in order
5%
to...
minimum match that the county has.
Everybody understand?
Yep.
Do we have a motion?
Presented.
Mr. Sneed, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bilbo, on the question? Roll call?
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. McKinley?
Yes.
10 to 1.
10-1. Going down to number 21. Two institutions, that would be, the savings would be $62,000. That's the request that LCC had made. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Ms. Hauk and Mr. Urban. On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. McKinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Going down to the next one. This is as a result of the request from the Conservation District to add $5,000 to their budget from the county. And I believe that my amendment keeps their contribution the same as what the county has been providing to them.
So moved.
Ms. Wakus?
Second.
Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McKinley?
Yes.
10 to 1.
Thank you. Going
Mr.
down
Chair, if I
to,
could, that's actually a non-reduction, correct?
we took $5,000 out
Of
of their
their-
request.
That was their, oh, I thought it was just the opposite.
It is
there.
not a reduction, it's the same. They would be getting the same funding as they've been getting,
Very good, okay.
okay? But they had made a request for an increase,
What they asked for. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay?
Very good, thank you.
Going down to reserve,
Right, this was my
Ms. Hauk?
proposal to reduce what's allocated to the reserve from next year's revenues by $300,000. So it would take it down from $500,000 to $200,000.
okay? Ms. Hauk makes that motion, we have a second for Ms. Hauk.
Second.
Mr. Urban?
Yeah, I'm sure that throughout the year, Mr. Pedri and Mr. Swets are gonna find savings from positions not filled that they can bring to council and move money back into the reserve, maybe build that thing up to about $1 million, so.
I appreciate the vote of confidence, sir.
You got it.
Misplaced though it may be.
You got it. No, I don't think it's
I
misplaced.
just want you to realize that the one below it deals with the same item, and the request is $100,000
I know.
Sorry,
in
you make an
reduction,
amendment?
and the reason for that is $400,000 is what we've had in the reserve this year.
Yeah.
So it's similar, it's actually a little bit less than what we had in the budget for this year. So it's similar. You know, with the size of our budget, I think it's necessary that we have some kind of reserve in order to have some monies or funding available if we have crises or emergencies. But just so I point that out, and we'll,
And I would just say that we're gonna finish the year with $400,000 in the reserve, because the reserve wasn't touched and it won't be touched in the next 3 weeks. It doesn't mean we don't have money available, it means that on the balance sheet in next year's money, we would just allocate, you know, whatever amount we're gonna allocate. It doesn't mean that we're taking money out of the pocket that we have the money in right now.
but I also think it looks good in the budget, and I know the financial institutions definitely look at that.
So are you making an amendment?
No, we'll vote on yours first, then I'll make my amendment. And then I'll make my motion. Okay, Ms. Hauk made the motion. We have a second by Mr. Urban.
So just to clarify, so it
Go ahead.
really comes down to either voting for
23 or 24.
or voting no against both of them.
That's one way to do
Or if you
it.
vote yes, we're going
No,
Well,
then
then
you-
it's 400. So, it's true though, right?
Yeah, if you vote to reduce it
If
by
you vote yes to
300,
vote.
then
Can we just,
vote
can we
to
just meet
reduce by
halfway?
1.
Can we make another amendment
Excuse me?
for 200,000? Can we just meet in the middle?
Yeah, I'll second that. You wanna make it, I'll second it.
I'll make that amendment.
Matt, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, instead of fighting over 300 and 100, let's just meet at 200. Go from there.
200? 200 savings,
Yes.
which would take the debt, the reserve down to $300,000, correct?
Correct.
Am I right in saying that? Mr. Vo, do we have a second? It was Mr. Urban, I think, right?
Yeah.
So we have 2 amendments.
No, you have one amendment to Ms. Hauk's motion. So we vote on the amendment first,
You didn't vote, okay, so you didn't.
and the vote would be to take, for the amendment would be 500,000 to 300,000, which would result in a $200,000 savings. Okay?
So we're gonna vote on the amendment
We
first.
vote on the amendment first.
So this is to have a reserve of, excuse me, this would have a, so this is to have a reserve of,
If we pass the amendment, you're gonna have a $300,000 reserve.
300,000, yes.
we pass the amendments at $300,000.
Yes,
Yes.
$200,000 in savings. Okay?
Understood.
On the amendment, roll call?
Ms. Howe?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Nope.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
5 no, 6 yes.
6 yes? The amendment passes. So now we have a motion, going back to Ms. Hauk, we have a motion with the amendment that would go from $500,000 in the reserve down to $300,000, which would result in a savings of $200,000. Everybody understand? Very good. Question?
No.
Roll call.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
What? I'm sorry.
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
5 no, 6 yes.
Passes. Motion passes. We now have a reserve of $300,000 with a potential savings of $200,000. And it's not necessary to do number 24.
I'm sorry, and I have to apologize, I'm a little confused, I have to admit. You know, so I voted for his amendment of 200,
Right.
Yeah.
which passed.
The amendment passed.
Yeah.
And now we voted for the motion with the amendment.
So I voted against what I wanted to. All right, so I thought I was double
It's
dipping.
still passed.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
So you got what you
Sorry,
wanted, I
thought
believe.
we were gonna take it down a little further, so that's why I was.
No.
By accident, it worked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I-
so,
Okay.
My intent
So-
was.
It was-
The intent.
The way Mr. Vogt stated it.
That's correct.
There you go.
That's what passed.
I voted down my own amendment.
All right, just,
That, well, I'm at the point I was just getting ready to ask who's on first.
all right. So just so I'm clear, there was $500,000 in the reserve when it was proposed. Due to that amendment, there is currently $300,000 in the reserve. That's correct.
In the proposed budget.
Correct.
A result of the $200,000 savings. Okay? Down to corrections. Ms. Wakus,
Oh, yes, okay.
number 25.
So, yes, I believe this was the amendment that was discussed at the work session. I don't know, do you agree? I see you're here from corrections.
Sir Rakovich is here.
Yes, because what we've done now is we've reduced it by 100,000.
Well, Ms. Wakus, are you making the motion?
Well,
Yeah,
it's a
yes, but I
question.
just want to clarify.
Well, he'll have
I'm
a chance to
sorry,
get up.
I'm making the motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Urban?
Yeah.
On the question, Mr. Rakovich?
If I'm being asked if I agree with that cut, my answer would be absolutely not. I believe we need the $200,000 in there for any occurrences that might happen where we have to ship out inmates to other facilities. I made the comparison that that would be approximately 7 inmates a day for 1 year.
Okay.
In addition, council, if I could just remind you, just cut the reserve $200,000. So if Mr. Rakovich if Mr. Rakovich comes to me and he says I have to send inmates out outside of the facility for safety reasons, and I'm over my budget, I'm going to do it. We're going to say do it, because that's what it comes down to. And then we're going to come in front of county council, take the money out of reserve, which has now been reduced by $200,000. Mr. Rakovich has proven to be a good steward of this money. He doesn't use it unless he absolutely positively has to. I would ask the council vote no on this particular amendment.
And I just want to reiterate, Mr. Pedri, that every month that you don't hire somebody and there's a vacant position, I would urge you to bring that information to council so council can take that money from your line items and move it back into the reserve, because that's not happening.
Everybody understand? Any questions, any further questions, should I say?
Yeah, just a comment, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Again, this is no comment on Mr. Rakovich's managerial responsibilities or capabilities. I think he's excellent. He's an asset to our staff, to our council, our manager, and the people of Luzerne County. But again, if we look at it, it's going to be a lot of my minutes I'm going to put forward. If you look at years past, this is one of those line items that is not used. I understand it's there for contingencies, and I get those contingencies are very real. However, we see an awful lot of transfers throughout county government that if push came to shove and the emergency situation really did present itself, we could find a way to cover that, and we have a $200,000 reserve. And we could play that fiddle with almost everything on county budgets as things come up, and that we should have this in the reserve. We could have millions on reserve just in case something happens. We don't have that luxury. So I support Ms. Wakes. I was going to make that later, but I think $100,000 is reasonable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, the motion is to take the $200,000 proposal, reduce it by $100,000, which would result in the budget having a line item of $100,000. Okay? Mr. Morelli, you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it this time.
Roll call.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No?
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
3 yes, 8 no.
3 yes, 8 no. Do we have any other motions in this regards?
I'll make a motion to take it down to 150. Take 50,000 out.
From 200,000 to
To
150,000, which would
150.
result in a savings of 50,000? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Urban?
Yeah.
Do we have a second for Mr. Urban's motion?
Second.
Mr. Haas? On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No?
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
4 yes.
4 yes, 7 no. Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, moving down to the controller, Mr. Haas,
Yes, Controller Special Legal
number
Services.
26.
Number 26, and I've got quite a few here, Mr. Chairman. A lot of them are relatively small, and just to all my colleagues on council, again, these are not arbitrary. When you look at the telescoped view of the budget over the past couple years, a lot of these items have not been used at all, some to a very small degree, and I thought the cuts were relatively benign on a lot of these issues. I will withdraw a few to come, and I'll speak to those when they come, because of what our staff has told us. So just like, I don't take this in an arbitrary manner.
Present.
Okay, Mr.
So yes,
Sneed?
thank you, Mr. Chief.
Who's the second?
Second.
Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
10 yes, 1 no.
10 yes, 1 no. Mr. Haas, you're still up 2728.
So moved, Mr. Chair. For number 27, the reduction of $100, yielding a savings of $100.
Okay,
Present second.
okay. Mr. Sneak, on the question? Roll call.
Mr. Vogt.
Yes.
Ms. Wakus.
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Mr. Hauk.
Yes.
Mr. Morelli.
Yes.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Ms. Sedman.
Yes.
Mr. Schnee.
Yes.
Mr. Urban.
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Mr. Haas?
Same, sir. I submit that as amended.
Okay. We have a second?
So moved.
Ms. Morelli? Roll call?
Ms. Wakus.
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Hauk.
Yes.
Mr. Morelli.
Yes.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Ms. Sedman.
Yes.
Mr. Schnee.
Yes.
Mr. Urban.
Yes.
Mr. Vogt.
Yes.
Mr. McGinley.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Moving down to the next item, which is under Budget and Finance. And I want you to take note that on the top of the next page, there's also a amendment that's submitted that is related to the one at the bottom of the page here. The first one that I'm speaking about is the one that I submitted. The proposed budget for the refunds, the real estate refunds, were $550,000. My proposal is $525,000. I want you to note that on the next page, Mr. Haas has submitted an amendment that would take the $550,000 to $450,000, which would result in $100,000 in savings, okay? So let's go back to number 29. Do we have a motion to take the $550,000 to $525,000 with a resultant savings of $25,000?
Presented.
Mr. Snee? Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Wakus? On the question.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to amend your original amendment, and
Well,
in the
mine's
amount
a motion, but you want to amend my motion?
in the amount of $100,000.
Okay. Mr. Haas makes an amendment. Who makes a second?
Second.
Ms. Hauk? And essentially, if I'm correct, Mr. Haas, you're taking the $550,000 and take it down to $450,000?
$450,000.
Which
So-
would result in $100,000?
It would add a $75,000 reduction in your original
Yes,
motion.
but yours would take it down to $450,000, which
$450,000,
would, the
yes.
net reduction would be $100,000, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Question?
Yes.
Can I ask Mr. Swets, can you talk to this?
Sure. This year we spent $486,000 to date. We budgeted $450,000. We're already over budget. We anticipate spending another $60,000 to $65,000 by year end. So at a minimum, we're going to be at $525,000. We requested $550,000. We put a lot of time in the budget book and came up with the $550,000.
You have cases to back that up?
Mr. Schrager had a list. I thought it was sent to all of council.
And yet, we're not touching the reserve, so where's the money coming from?
This year we were able to do it because we were able to move money. I don't know
Yeah,
if
we
we're able
had-
to do it next year.
Yeah.
I think
We had
in
money on
the-
budget and finance.
We'll have a reserve if you need it.
And we had.
Okay.
No, my
Mr. Morelli, did you get your answer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
If I could, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I believe, Dave, wasn't that we had an appeal in our favor down in the Hazelton area, I think the Hazelton School
Yeah, you
District?
had a reassessment.
That was part of that. So again, I understand this is not an exact science. I know Mr. Schwager's put a lot of time into it, and we had a discussion about that everybody's privy to. I believe it was down in Hazel Township. And this way, especially this line item, this is a lot like the weather. You can get it close, but you can never predict it accurately. And unfortunately, unlike the newscasters, the weathercasters, we don't get paid, when we're a little bit off. But I think this is something that it's reasonable. It's certainly not extreme. We will have some goods and bads come our way with the appeals process. And again, I leave that as submitted.
Okay. My comment would be, over the past several years, I think we've exceeded our budget almost every year. And unfortunately, it seems to be that's the trend. There seems to be a lot of appeals, particularly some of the commercial appeals seem to get substantial refunds.
We did add $250,000 from the LRTA and the KOZ this year that was not added in other years coming off. So just, again, I understand council's role,
Yeah.
but I just want to put that out there. We did add $250,000 in the revenue line.
And I want to remind council that with those properties coming off of KLZs, which is great things for us, and we'll be able to add to that line, every single one of those landowners are going to appeal the assessment, and then now they're going to start paying taxes. They're going to pay attention to those things.
Okay, we have an amendment by Mr. Haas, second by Ms. Hauk,
Mr. Pedri, wait, you said they're gonna appeal, but if they haven't put an appeal in by August 31st, they can't appeal. Till next year.
Till next year.
Till next year, which is the 2021 budget, not the 20 budget, the 21 budget.
Yes.
The
And we have that-
amendment is to take the proposed number of 550, reduce it to 450, which would result in $100,000 in savings, correct? Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Bilbo,
No.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Hauk,
Yes.
Mr. Morelli,
No.
Mr. Perry,
No.
Ms. Sedman,
No.
Mr. Schnee.
No.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
No?
Ms. Wakus.
No.
Mr. McGinley,
No.
3 yes, 8 no.
Amendment fails, 3 yes, 8 no. So we go back to the original motion by Mr. Snee, second by Ms. Wakus, 550,000 to 525. On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Ms. Hauk,
Yes.
Mr. Morelli,
No.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Sedman,
Yes.
Mr. Schnee.
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Ms. Wakus.
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
10-1.
10-1, motion carries. Are we ready for a recess?
Gonna finish another sheet.
You want to go another sheet?
Yeah, because then we have 2 more, right?
Oh, we have 6 sheets in total.
Yeah, so then we only just finished one, so let's.
Okay, everybody fine, I'm fine if everybody else is. All right.
49 back here, so I have 8, 15, 4, 7.
I think number 30 has been taken care of.
Yes.
Mr. Haas, 30, 31, 32, and 33 under administration.
Yes, I submit that as presented.
Okay? Mr. Haas makes the motion. Do we have a second for Mr. Haas? Mr. Urban? The motion is to take the advertising budget under administration and reduce it from 12,000 down to 6,000. Sure.
So currently, my year-to-date advertising budget is $9,000. That's what I've spent so far. And next year, we're gonna have new machines. We'll also have the governor's initiatives with absentee registration and voting registration, which is gonna take a considerable amount of advertising to make sure the public is well-educated and know about all the changes, so no one's accused of disenfranchising voters. I'm not in favor of taking this down to $6,000 when my year-to-date advertising is $9,000. And I'll leave it at that.
Year-to-date expense in advertising is 9,000?
Correct. My year-to-date expense.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
You would like to make an amendment? Certainly. Ms. Wakus makes an amendment.
Right, instead of reducing it, that much money, how about if we reduce it by 2,000?
Down to $10,000?
Yeah.
Do we have a second for Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Ms. Segman? On the question?
I just want to say, I agree with him, you know, I mean, I understand we want to cut and we're doing the right thing, but we also have to remember, we have a job to do in this county. We have to function. So let's just keep in mind what the big picture is here. So, you know, I appreciate everyone coming in, giving their feedback, but I'm not going to support that because I think it's going to be a special year and we have to do what's right to the public. So.
Yeah, if I could add to just on this one, election advertising, it's going to be a huge thing next year, 2020, Luzerne County election, new machines, as Mr. Parsonic said. This is not the area that we need to cut $2,000. Maybe we save $2,000 somewhere else. I would highly recommend that council keep this budget at $12,000.
Anyone else?
I know when we had the former director here in the local elections, we always got the story that it's a local election, we're going to have more offices, so therefore the advertising had to go up. And then whenever there was a mid-year election or a presidential, then there was the song was, okay, we need more money because it's a big election. So if you look at the past, again, if you see there in your budget there on the page, this has not been utilized in years past.
Anyone else? We're voting on the amendment. The amendment is proposed number is 12,000. To take that down to 10,000, that would result in a $2,000 savings, correct, Ms. Wickes? Roll call?
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Nope.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
5 yes, 6 no.
5 yes, 6 no. The amendment does not pass. Go back to the original motion. Mr. Haas, second by Mr. Urban. 12,000 down to 6,000 as a result of $6,000 savings. Roll call?
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Ms. Wakes?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
3 yes, 8 no.
Motion fails. Mr. Haas, 32, which is printing.
As presented.
If I could just jump in here, Mr. McGinley, I don't think the administration has any objections to 32, 33, 34, 35. So I don't know if you can do them as one.
We're going to do them as
Wait,
we
hold on a second.
come upon them.
Hold on a second, maybe we do have an objection,
I do not. I have no objections to those.
as I said.
Okay, Mr. Haas makes the motion. Do we have a second for the printing?
Second.
Ms. Wakes, on the question. Roll call.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
11-0.
33, Mr. Haas, do you make that motion?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Second, Mr. Vogt. Roll call.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
11-0.
Down to 34, this is a unique one, right, Mr. Haas?
Yeah, it's a revenue.
Yeah, we're increasing revenue.
We're increasing revenue.
Okay, Mr. Haas makes the
First one
motion. Do we have a
yelled no, gets the
second?
prize.
Second.
Mr.
Small.
Vogt. Roll call. Increased revenue. We should be happy with this one.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
She'll
Oh,
have it.
Con, excuse me.
Oh, Rhonda.
Question.
Yes. Is the revenue for licenses for small games of chance? Is that what it is for?
I believe so.
Mr.
but
Parsons,
Mr.
yeah.
Parsons can speak to that.
Yeah, so right now we're about at 35,000 in revenue this year, so I'm okay with that number. That's for the small games of chance licenses, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
And the same thing with the next one, the bingo, when we get to it.
okay. We'll continue with roll call.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
11-0.
Mr. Haas, bingo.
Yes, sir. As presented.
Second.
Second, Mr. Vogt. Roll call.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Moving down to the Public Defender's Office, Mr. Haas.
As presented.
Do we have a second for Mr. Haas?
Second.
Mr. Snee. This is a proposed, was 92,658. Mr. Greenwald's in the back there. Mr. Haas has a new number of 85,000, which will result in a savings of $7,658. On the question, Mr. Greenwald, do you want to comment?
I don't want to be redundant and I don't want to be repetitive of what I've said last week, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't point out something in this area and others as it relates to the Public Defender's Office. In my mind, what's conspicuously absent in all of these submissions is anything to do with the District Attorney's Office. There's not one dime.
I don't
Not
think we
one
got-
dime.
No, I think there's a few later
But it
on.
may not be, well, it's certainly not, I'm not aware of it.
Okay,
So let me talk about this.
go ahead. That's what we ask you. Come up to the podium to talk about.
The district attorney's office in this area is $130,000. So I'm disturbed by the fact that even though we do 80 to 90% of the criminal cases, you feel that the work that we do is basically justifies half of the expense or half of the money given to the district attorney's office. I don't understand that. I'd be happy with 80% of what you give the DA.
Okay. Anyone else? Question?
And I guess I would, while I'm up here, I would say the same thing about the next line item.
I'm going to withdraw the next one.
Okay.
Well, we have a motion from Mr. Haas, second by Mr. Snee, to take the proposed number 92,658 and reduce it to 85,000, which would result in a $7,658 savings. Correct? Roll call?
Mr. Vogt,
Yes?
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
6 yes, 5 no.
6 yes, 5 no, motion carries. Moving down to number 38. This is under subscriptions. The proposed number was 75,000, and the new request would be 57,000, which would result in an $18,000 savings. Do we have a motion? Mr. Urban, do we have a second? Mr. Snee? On the question? Roll call.
Mrs. Wakus?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes?
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
4 no, 7 yes.
Motion carries 7-4. Moving down under corrections, Mr. Haas.
Based on Mr. Rakovich speaking with us the last council meeting, Mr. McGinley, I'd like to withdraw amendment number 39,
39,
number 40,
withdrawn.
and 41.
40 and 41?
All three of them.
Okay.
Actually, the 39 was withdrawn because we already voted on that.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
39, 40, and 41 are withdrawn?
Correct.
So we go down to
41.
number 42, blood test.
42, yes, as presented.
Mr. Haas makes that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snee. On the question. Roll call.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes?
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
3 no, 8 yes.
8-3, motion carries. Mr. Haas,
I'd like to withdraw number 43.
that's withdrawn. Down to the next group under corrections.
I'd like
Mr.
to withdraw
Haas,
number 44.
44.
And number 45.
And 45. Down to 46.
This water, yeah, I'd like to submit that, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Okay,
46.
Mr. Haas makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Urban,
On the question.
on the question.
Mr. Rakovich, what's our water bill at now?
As of this moment, we're about 85% of that.
85% of 45,000 or 30,000?
Of 45,000.
45?
But-
So it's like about 33 or 34,000?
Once again, last week I had said we're trying to reapportion those bills.
Yeah.
I mean, can we probably potentially make it through the year? Not with the full cut, but we'll be transferring from water fund at one facility to another to complete the year. just so that we're
Well,
aware
you've
of
used
that
80%, you said, so that's like $34,000
thus far.
thus far.
Correct.
And you still have
15,000 realistic is my question to you.
$15,000 cut, right?
Not particularly.
Okay.
It's a little high.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll make the amendment 7,500.
Mr. Sneed makes an amendment
Second.
to take the 45,000, take it down to 37,500. Am I correct?
Correct.
And that would result in a $7,500 savings, and Ms. Morelli made the second to that amendment, correct?
Yep.
Okay? Vote on the amendment first. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Very good. We still have to vote on the motion that Mr. Haas made with Mr. Urban with that amendment. So it would take $45,000 down to $37,500, which would result in a $7,500 savings.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Very good. Mr. Haas, we're continuing on with corrections there.
Yes,
Number
indeed.
47, 48, 49.
All three of those as presented, if you want to do them one at a time,
Yep.
that's, I understand.
Mr. Haas, room and board. Mr. Haas makes a motion. Do we have a second for Mr. Haas? Ms. Morelli?
And these are all, yeah, these are all revenue items too. That's hence the
Yeah, these are
increase.
revenue items, so we're increasing from $1,500 revenue to $2,000.
And again, that's just
correct?
taking into account prior years. Again, most of them are well above this, but I thought I'd have a conservative amount of increase.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Ms. Morelli. On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Very good. Medical records fee, Mr. Haas.
As presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Seidman? Roll call?
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Moving down to number 49, damage restitution, Mr. Haas.
49 as presented.
Do we have a second? Mr. Vogt? Roll call?
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Mr. Haas, moving down to the next group.
Yeah, I understand this one is not popular, and when we looked at the other parts of the budget, some allowances for other overtime, like the holiday pay, also went up significantly. And I know it's tight, and again, just for the record, Mr. Kovich does a great job. There's no reflection on him, but if we could really shoot for the stars here and reduce overtime, I think that'd be very prudent.
You making a motion?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Urban? On the question?
We've hired a lot of corrections officers over the years, and every time we hire them, we say it's going to reduce overtime. That's been the standard line that I've heard for the last 8 years since I've been here on council. We're going to hire more, and the result's going to reduce overtime. And I'd like to see this line go down. I'd like to see it go down. I understand you got people that call off and take off, and some of that's controllable, some of it's not. But the overtime budget's got to go down with the hires. I mean,
Ms. Seidman, did you have a question? question?
Yeah, we're taking down the overtime to 100,000?
No, we're taking the overtime down to 1.2 million, which will result in $100,000 in
Oh,
savings.
so he's supposed to get by on 1.2, 100,000 less.
Yes.
1.1.
No, it was 1.3 to 1.2, Mr. Rakovich. Okay?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, do you have a comment?
Mr. Rakovich, with these wages and overtime, and it's $100,000, I mean, but there are just times where you're trying to, run that facility safely, and you're bound by there has to be X amount of guards on, X amount of, it's non-negotiable.
Minimum manning compliments. And if I could, I know we're in a hurry tonight, Mr. Urban.
I'm not in a hurry. I'm not
Not in a hurry. We're gonna be here until we finish the job.
Our position budget as far as officers has not gone up the entire time that I've been here. So the number of officers has remained. It's not like I've said, I need more officers and I can bring them down. I do know the argument that you're speaking to, but my minimum employee position budget has remained.
And there are days, and we talked about this, that it's just like where I work. You got a front half shift, you got a back half shift, and in the middle of the day, in the middle of the shift, you got excess. You've got people that you really are over the minimum manning. There might be days you do training, and I mentioned that program that we use at our facility, that VTO program, and I hope you take a look at it. Give somebody the ability to take off without pay. I mean, if people, believe it or not, people want off sometimes. It doesn't count against their vacation, doesn't count against their sick time. It's just another day off, and it'll allow you to save some money and at the same time, keep your minimums in place and maybe even over your minimums.
We have looked at that a little bit.
Yeah, you'd have to work in the contract, but I think it's a good proposal.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah, question. Mr. Rakovich, about where are you now with overtime? When it comes to the $1.3 million, are you close to that now? Or
We're over it.
you're over it?
Yep. I mean, in our budget, it's not reflecting that, but we also don't have the last 2 weeks of pay into that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just one thing.
Yes.
If we vote this no, we don't have anything else. I mean, there's not something that Mr. Rakovich said he could live with or anything. It's just.
1.3 is what the proposed budget was.
So that's, okay.
Correct? Okay. Anyone else? Roll call on wages overtime from 1.3 million to 1.2, which would result in $100,000 in savings. Roll call.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No?
Ms. Wakes?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Nope.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No.
2 yes, 9 no.
Motion fails. Moving down to the next one, Mr. Haas, clothing and uniforms.
Clothing uniforms, yes, as presented. Wait a minute, that is number 51?
51.
Yes, yes, sir.
As presented,
Yes.
Mr. Haas makes a motion. Do we have a second for Mr. Haas?
So moved.
Ms. Morelli. On the question?
I don't think we-
$1,500 is proposed. Take it down to $1,000, which will result in a $500 savings.
I don't think we had any objections to 51 through 55.
Is that correct, Mr. Rakovich?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's go through them then. Roll call?
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Telephone and internet, Mr. Haas?
As presented?
Present. Second,
Second.
Ms. Howe? Roll call?
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 53, other communication expenses, Mr. Haas?
As presented, sir.
Second.
Second, Mr. Snee. Roll call?
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 54, travel expense, Mr. Haas.
Yes, as presented.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Sneed. Roll call.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Mr. Haas, mileage.
55 as presented.
Second.
Second, Mr. Vogt. Roll call.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Number 56, water.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to withdraw that.
Withdraw 56.
Yes, sir.
We're going to take a break till
Yes.
10 minutes after 9.